when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its 2 front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson had been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich, don't dirty minds, away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, Christ, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
There you are. Good evening and welcome to the Political Asylum right here on Talk. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan and I will be your host for the next 3 thrilling hours of news, views and topical debate all the way to 10 o'clock. Get involved, get stuck in, get on the show and call me on 0344499 1000, or you can WhatsApp voice note me on the same number and I promise to play your message out. That's 0344499 1000. It is Monday, June the 30th, the hottest day of the year. Here's what's coming up. Controversial Irish rap group Kneecap and my starring role in their Glastonbury show. Many thanks, boys. You made me a star. We'll show you how in just a little while. Meanwhile, Bob Vylan's anti-Semitic chanter, Pascal Robinson Foster. That's his name. Pascal Robinson Foster. Vegan poet. His sister's called Paris. His brother's called Porsche. Man, those middle-class revolutionaries, eh? But the group's anti-Israel race hate has landed them in big trouble. The Americans swiftly cancelled their visa, so there goes their uneagerly awaited US tour. And they took their time, but finally, after more than 24 hours, why did it take them that long? The Avon and Somerset police have decided that Bob Vylan will face a criminal investigation into allegations of inciting racial hatred. This was, of course, where millions of people saw them on TV, saw the singer. Bob Vylan, they're actually a kind of duo, they're kind of a group, but the lead singer is the down-to-earth working class named Pascal Robinson Foster. Keeping it real. But he and the group will face a criminal investigation for shouting death, death to the IDF, which is a clear call for violent race hate against Jewish people. With their silly school kid rhymes and sixth form counterculture cretinism, Bob Vylan are clearly self-harming morons, middle-class morons at that. But now we are hearing that BBC Director General Tim Davie was at Glastonbury, and amid all the high-flying pro-Palestine fun and steamy hot weather, he apparently made the decision to carry on live screening Vylan's anti-Semitic act. So they do the chanting. The case that this is what we're hearing now, this has just come out in the last 20 minutes or so, it's being reported, that the Director General, who BBC send about 20,000 staff down to Glastonbury every year because they cover it round the clock 24/7. No, they were about 500 staff there. Obviously, the Director General was down there enjoying a freebie like the rest of them. Anyway, he was approached and said, oh, look, this is the story. We haven't heard from him yet. But the story is that he was approached and said, look, they've just shouted death, death to the IDF. And he said to carry on screening them, carry on live streaming them. So, now, not only are there calls for Davey to be sacked, but also that he too should be investigated for effectively encouraging blatant law breaking. He's done nothing but stagger from one hapless crisis to the next. So, should this guy, Tim Davey, finally be sacked, be fired over this one? What do you think? I mean, the BBC has screwed it up in spades at Glastonbury. The entire event turned into this festival of pro-Palestine fanaticism sponsored by the state broadcaster. The organisers have got questions to answer as well. They say they were shocked by what Bob Villan said. Well, you know, how can they be shocked when they'd allowed the entire event to become a Palestine flag flowing carnival? Everybody waving Palestine flags. Lots of Iranian flags as well. So the organisers said, I was shocked, we had no idea. Come on. You encouraged all of that. You better sort it out next year, that's for damn sure. So, should the organisers be looked at as well? Should the organisers be investigated by the police? Should the BBC be investigated by the police? And are the police right to investigate Bob Villan? Let me know what you think. 0344 499 1000. Also tonight, we're going to cover the case of a poor old pensioner. We don't know the outcome of this case yet, so we have to be slightly careful. But he's been waiting to go to trial for an alleged offence for more than 4 years. It involves his neighbours. He's alleged to have made an obscene gesture at them and also to have sworn at them. That's the allegation. It isn't about the case, though. It's not about whether or not he's guilty. It's about why this poor old guy, he's 77, has had to wait 4 years. This case constantly being delayed. Justice delayed is justice denied. After 4 years, should this case be dropped? He's charged with he's got an absolute charge of harassment without violence. He's charged with harassment without violence. So should this case be after 4 years? We think that might be a record, the longest anyone's had to wait for a trial in this country. But you can't have people waiting 4 years for a trial, can you? 03444991000. Also, we'll talk about Keir Starmer's year from hell, the worst ever start by any Prime Minister in British history. Who says so? The guru of pollsters, Sir John Curtis. We'll talk about that later. Angela Rayner and her crew are on manoeuvres. They think they can get rid of Starmer and take over. They don't think he's got more than a year left in him. Let's hope it's not even that long. Also tonight, we'll talk to Ben Habib. He started up a new party called Advance UK. Reform UK, Advance UK. So many UKs around. But we'll find out from Ben what his new party is all about. Also, Layla Cunningham, who's a Westminster councillor, joined us last week. She's a long-term Tory councillor who defected to Reform last week, saying she couldn't make excuses for failure anymore. Song and dance all over the telly, on my show, all over the papers. Layla's a criminal lawyer. She's got 7 kids. She's easy on the eye, to be honest with you. She made a lot of publicity all over the place. The Tories have just written to her and said that they're suspending her membership because they think she might have broken the rules. And she's been told not to talk to anyone while they investigate. She said this is just a sign of what the Tories have become. Dysfunctional, and useless. She thinks that hopelessness, that bureaucratic bungle, is a sign of the Tories' death spiral. We'll also be joined by Detective Mike Neville. We'll talk about the criminality, the potential criminality involved down at Glastonbury. How many laws were broken there generally? A lot of anti-Semitic chanting going on throughout that event. And later we'll take all of your calls, 0344 499 1000. Plus, you might want to get involved in this. We've just learned that another 200 migrants came across the channel yesterday, and still they come, and still they come, and still this Prime Minister and his useless government have no solution. And what are we going to do about this ongoing invasion? 0344 499 1000. All that and so much more. So don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Let's spend Monday night together. And let's go straight over to my first guest for the first hour. She is Talk's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. Welcome, Isabel.
Welcome. Well, I was surprised to see your face pop up at Glastonbury. I never thought you'd be starring there.
Nor did I. Funnily enough, let's start the show with this. OK, everyone, if you didn't see this, I did put it on Twitter. But in the build-up to their controversial counterculture set, Kneecap sort of played a video of all their fascist media enemies, and I'm pretty proud to be right among them. Well, this is what the people at Glastonbury saw in the build-up to Kneecap's eagerly awaited concert. Check it out.
Kneecap.
Kneecap?
Kneecap.
Kneecap is pretty disgusting.
A band I've never even heard of.
They'll never make anything of their lives.
A little bit of breaking news to bring you, and that is that counter-terrorism police will investigate rap trio Kneecap.
Yesterday I wrote to Glastonbury Festival urging them to remove this
Despicable evil which Kneecap represents.
Yeah, so that was me. Kneecap, pretty disgusting. I think what I was saying at the time, if I remember rightly, it was the fact that they've chosen as their name Kneecap. Which in Northern Ireland I think is a pretty disgusting thing to call your band, with the history of kneecapping in that benighted province. So that's what I was talking about at the time. But tell you what, Isabel's pretty proud to make that list of Kneecap's list of shame.
Well, it's more of a badge of honour, really, isn't it? We can define ourselves by our enemies, and I think you did quite well there.
Yeah, very, very proud. Now, of course, we thought they would be the story, and of course they did their usual thing, sort of moaning about the Prime Minister and, the freedom of speech and the fact they've got this upcoming court case. We have to be careful. One of them is charged with flying a Hezbollah flag at a concert in Kentish Town in northern London, and he denies that charge, so we'll have to be very careful there. But the band make no mistake of their stance. They are very pro-Palestine. They're against the government, and of course they shouted at a concert in Belfast, the only good Tory is a dead Tory, kill your local MP, which didn't go down very well with the family of poor David Amos, a wonderful Tory MP who was indeed killed by a lunatic constituent. So I don't think Kneecap are much to write home about, to say the least. But they were being backed up, if you like, by this group. They're not just one person, a group called Bob Vylan, and they overshadowed Kneecap, really, because the lead singer of Bob Vylan, the fantastically named Pascal Robinson Foster, whose brother is called Porsche and whose sister is called Paris, he's a vegan poet. Man, this guy's very, very down to earth, isn't he? Middle class idiot, obviously. But he shouted, "Death, death to the IDF," which is quite clearly a call to violence against a racial group. It's an incitement to racial violence or racial hate, and therefore the police, the Avon and Somerset police, they've taken incredibly, they took more than 24 hours to decide that this was a case for a criminal investigation. I don't know why it took them that long, because in that time, very, very swiftly, America revoked Bob Villan's visa. So very sadly, the poor Americans now won't be able to enjoy Bob Villan's American US tour. So that's gone. So the Americans in there like a shot. For some reason, our cops took 24 hours to decide that a criminal offence may have been committed here, but they have now decided that. So we need to talk about them. Why did it take them so long? Bearing in mind no charges yet. And also, we've just learnt, literally, Isabel, within the last half an hour or so, that the BBC Director General, Tim Davie, was on site, was at Glastonbury. He was presented with what Bob Villan had said, and said, look, they've just shouted this. This is the story anyway. We haven't got Tim Davie's side of it yet. But it was presented to Tim Davie, and he said, carry on with the live streaming. Now, he shouldn't have. If this is the case, he may be in trouble about this. Because if he, as the Director General of the BBC, he should be saying, well, if these people arguably have broken the law, I have to cut them off. But he didn't. He let them carry on for 40 minutes. They later took it off the iPlayer. But I think a lot of BBC people made some dubious decisions here. And I think the situation is so serious, Isabel. You know what it's like at BBC? Deputy heads could roll.
Yeah, or there could be an internal inquiry, couldn't there? A review of everything.
Yeah, they'll mark their own homework again, yeah.
And then entirely zero heads will roll. This was a disgraceful performance by the attention-seeking, puerile rabble-rouser, grime rapper, Bob Villan, and his dreadlocked friend Bobby Villan. It's all very confusing. This is a dreadlocked duo. They're both called some variation of Bob Villan, and yet their real names, one of them, as you said, is this double-barreled name. The other one keeps his real name a secret. And it wasn't just...
I've heard their music, I'm not surprised.
Right, it wasn't just death to the IDF. There was also... He also led the crowd in chants of From the River to the Sea, adding, you know, Inshallah, Palestine will be free. Now, whether or not that particular phrase is illegal is a point of question. But what is very well known to everybody at this point, so long after October the 7th, is that it is a highly inflammatory phrase which is deeply, deeply offensive to the Jewish community. So those bits of his performance, and frankly a lot else of what I heard, was pretty low, if not illegal. And quite shocking, really, to see the crowds of Palestinian waving flag bearers lapping it all up. And the way I see this is a real test of Keir Starmer and the other figures, Labour figures, who have claimed that there's no such thing as two-tier justice in Britain. After all, Lucy Connolly was jailed for 31 months for something, in my mind, a lot less serious than what we've just witnessed.
Indeed, and he's got a sign behind him, by the way, Bob Villan, or behind the band, which says Gaza, the United Nations have called it a genocide, and the BBC has called it a conflict. I think they're having a go at the BBC there. But technically, actually, the United Nations have not called it a genocide. They have suggested that Israel's warfare methods could be consistent with genocide. These people, like Bob and his gang, all these protesters, all these countercultural rebels who hate Israel, pro-Palestine, they never understand that you cannot just bandy around the term genocide. It has to be legally defined, it has to be legally proved, and that's why when he has behind him on the Glastonbury stage the United Nations has called Israel's actions a genocide, that's not true. So apart from shouting, death to the IDF, which allegedly must be considered to be a possible crime. It must be. That's got to be potentially inciting race hatred. You're calling for the death of people from a particular racial group, religious group, the Jews. So that must surely be potentially a crime. But behind him, he's got incorrect statements.
So arguably he's also guilty of spreading misinformation, which we know that our Prime Minister takes a very dim view of, don't we? Because people have literally been ended up in court over spreading misinformation and other associated so-called crimes. Look, in my opinion, I don't actually think that this pathetic individual should be prosecuted or end up in prison. But nor do I think Lucy Connolly should be. And what you end up concluding is that if rules are rules, and that's the basis on which Lucy Connolly was prosecuted, then I'm afraid this guy has to be too. You can't have it both ways. I don't think either of them should be. But since we've got one, I see the cases as pretty much equivalent. I mean, I've looked into this. I've spent some time looking into this today to see if there is much of a difference between the two cases, and I can't actually see much. I mean, there's some tiny niceties on which you could, dance on a pin, but I really think they are equivalent. So it's either neither or both.
You see, that's exactly my view. I mean, if we must have these hate laws, these hate speech laws, I don't approve of them at all. I'd rather not have them, and I'd actually rather allow idiots like Bob Villan to shout his puerile nonsense if he wants to, because I don't think it makes much difference to anything. Just as I didn't think that Lucy Connolly writing a few hurty words on Twitter hundreds of miles from the Southport riots made a blind bit of difference. So I think she should be allowed, we don't approve of it, but I don't think we should make it an imprisonable offence that somebody writes something nasty on Twitter. And frankly, if some silly little idiot pop star wants to try and act like he's kind of public enemy number one, counterculture hero, then, let him do it. But if Lucy Connolly and the like are going to get sent to jail for this, if we're going to make such a thing about hate speech, inciting racial violence, then in the interests of fairness and balance, then this guy, he has to be nicked, doesn't he? He has to be.
More than that, he has to be made an example of, just like she was. And in fact, to me, his case is much more powerful. The case against him is much more powerful by dint of the fact the guy literally had a mass audience. Not only did he have thousands of people listening to him in the open air, but literally millions of people will have seen that performance and will come to see that performance on the BBC and other platforms that may have broadcast it. So he quite literally had a mass audience, whereas Lucy Connolly was, I'm afraid to say, and I'm sure she wouldn't mind me saying this, bit of a nobody, really. I mean, there was no reason for anyone to look to her as a role model. Yeah. She was really just sort of tweeting into the ether. And yes, it got shared a few times, but nobody would say she had a crowd of genuine fans and followers who were going to rush off and do what she said. By contrast, Mr. Villan quite possibly does inspire people to look up to him and to emulate him. And it's not exactly a good position.
I just keep laughing at his name, Pascal Robinson Foster. Brother Porsche, sister Paris. Do me a favour. Let's talk about more of these legalities when we come back, Isabel, because I think it's quite fascinating. Let's stick around.
They promised stability.
They said the grown-ups are back in charge.
I was so happy you just couldn't believe it.
Our work is urgent, and we begin it today.
I mean, you couldn't really scrape together a worse gang of misfits to run a dog kennel. Broken promises.
Billions blown.
Botched U-turns.
And Britain is burning.
One of the most immeasurably eventful.
1 year in power.
And Britain in freefall. It's just been a disaster.
1 year of chaos.
Friday, 4th of July.
9 p.m.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still with Talk's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. Isabel, let's just talk about Glastonbury for a few more minutes and the implications of what happened. If Bob Dylan had stood up there and shouted, screamed at the audience, "Death, death to the Muslim church," or "Death, death to black people," how quickly do you think the Avon and Somerset police would have been down on him like a ton of bricks? I think a lot quicker than 24 hours. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think immediately, and that's the point here. You know, doubtless his apologists will claim that this was sort of some kind of poetic thing, but actually I think it goes far more broad than this. I mean, I listened to more of the performance than I would like to have heard, frankly.
He's not very good, is he, old Bob?
There was a whole
He's
load
not as good as Bob Dylan, I don't think.
I don't think so. I don't think he's going to... People are still going to be talking about this guy in decades to come. But I heard him ranting about people who say they want their country back. Now, that is actually a lot of our listeners, and frankly, the way that you and I often feel. You know, we want our country back, and that can mean all sorts of things. But the way he was shouting about people with those feelings in an incredibly confrontational way, expletive-ridden response to that, felt to me like a very, very divisive thing to be yelling from a platform at Glastonbury. In short, I think this guy massively abused a very, very privileged position up there on a stage at Glastonbury to spread some pretty divisive and deeply unpleasant stuff, which went well beyond what he had to say about the IDF and what he had to say about From the River to the Sea. And it may or may not have been criminal or illegal or whatever. But why are we kind of glorifying and celebrating someone who is rapping these themes? It really tells you a lot about how angry and divided and bitter our society has become.
Yeah, and he's just fanning those flames because he thinks it's good for his career. But he screwed his career up because the Americans immediately revoked his visa, so the Bob Dylan tour of America won't happen now. And looks like he's going to get his collar felt. The Avon and Somerset police have now launched a criminal investigation. They kind of have to. So we'll see where the legal system takes Mr. Robinson Foster Robinson, is it? What's his name? So we'll see what happens. By the way, he was born and raised on the mean streets of Brixton. No, not Brixton. Sorry, Ipswich. That's right. Sorry, I got it wrong there. This guy. He's about as counterculture as Mr. Blobby. What a joke. But this is more serious, I think, is the BBC. The BBC is now saying Tim was there for a few hours. He was made aware during the time he was there of what had been said on stage, as in death to the IDF. He intervened to make sure the performance was not available on demand. That's on the iPlayer. But he was very clear about that. Pulling the live stream brings certain technical challenges. With hindsight, we would have taken it down. Now, that is not an official quote. I'm just trying to find... BBC said... No, well, hang on a second. I think this is an official quote. The BBC has said, with hindsight, we should have pulled the stream during the performance. So, OK, so what we've got here is an admission that if this chronology is correct, that this guy, the Director General, was on site he made a decision about Bob Dylan, and the BBC is now saying, with hindsight, that was wrong. That was a wrong decision. Well, you know, how many more times are we going to let this guy, Tim Davie, make wrong decisions? The BBC, it seems to be, you know, everybody at the BBC just operates with impunity. No matter what they do, they never get fired. Well, I think that this guy, Davie, he may have crossed the line this time. What's your feelings?
Well, it definitely appears to be building this controversy rather than the heat going out of it. I mean, it's clearly a lot of political pressure now, various voices in senior positions calling for his resignation. And I think he is in quite a difficult position. I mean, I get that pulling the live stream would have caused what they call technical difficulties, but it would also have been a very, very firm statement that the BBC is not the place to platform those kinds of views. And that's pretty important given how much evidence there has been since October the 7th of bias in the BBC of this nature. You know, the Jewish community feels incredibly let down by all sorts of communities and institutions, the BBC being one of them, for persistent apparent bias in their reporting of the conflict. And by the way, the whole thing is so ironic, isn't it, that this hideous individual was spewing this bile at a music festival when it was precisely that set of circumstances, a music festival, and the terrorism at that event in Israel that sparked this whole thing in the first place.
Yeah, you've got this statement now. The story I'm reading is a sort of mixture of a BBC source and official statements. The official statement, this is a statement about what the Director General decided at Glastonbury, on the site at Glastonbury. They're saying the performance was part of a live stream on the Westholt stage on BBC iPlayer. The judgment on Saturday to issue a warning on stream while screaming online was in line with our editorial guidelines. In addition to that, the team were dealing with a live situation, but with hindsight, we should have pulled the stream during the performance. We regret that this did not happen. In the light of this weekend, we will look at our guidance around live events so we can be sure teams are clear on when it is acceptable to keep output on air. Well, they kept the output on air, according to this story, because the supreme leader of the BBC, the Director General, said so. So they're saying he made the wrong call. They're saying this in a BBC statement, that the boss got it wrong. Well, is nothing going to happen to him for this catastrophic decision, allowing an illegal performance to unfold before the eyes of millions of TV viewers?
Well, there's another point here, and it's quite an important one, which is the most cursory glance at this band's back catalogue, the most cursory glance at the lyrics of their previous hits, insofar as they've been big hits, would show red flags absolutely everywhere. I mean, they've got a track record of trying to attract attention by saying horrible things. You know, they were shouting about killing the Queen. They were shouting about exhuming Thatcher's body. Let's all go and dig up Maggie's grave. That kind of thing. So why was there no due diligence done? I mean, quite clearly, with that track record, it was very unlikely that live streaming his set was going to end in anything other than disaster.
And also, just finally, the organisers themselves, the Eavis family, they said, oh, well, Bob Dylan completely crossed the line. We're so shocked about this. I mean, come on. Look what they've created down at Worthy Farm there. It's a massive Palestine flag flying. That's all it is. In fact, you look around, there were quite a few Iranian flags as well. So they've, Michael Eavis, the old boss who started Glastonbury all those years ago, was it back in the late 60s or something, he said of this event, this festival, if you don't like our politics, go elsewhere. So in other words, they've turned Glastonbury into this massive pro-Palestine, pro-Iran fanaticism. And then when you get some dork like this bloke from Bob Villan comes on and says, death, death to the IDF, the organisers go, oh, we're so shocked. Well, no, you can't get away with that. They've got some responsibility. They've got questions to answer as well, possibly by the police, I would have thought. I mean, look at it. Look at it. You think you're in Gaza, there's so many Palestine flags.
It's just absolutely ridiculous. I've never been to Glastonbury, and after this, I was never going to anyway. But I can't imagine anything more horrendous than being amongst those kinds of people. What can you say? I mean, it's just awful to see all those flags.
Yeah, it's the organisers. The next time they've got to do something about this. They can't turn it into this kind of counterculture sixth form revolution.
Is it politics? Which is it?
Yeah, they've got to do something about this. They created this. They created this atmosphere. Listen, when we come back, we're going to talk about this poor old guy who has waited 4 years for a court case. That's got to be wrong. Justice delayed, folks, is justice denied. This man, I would argue, is having his justice denied. That next, stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still talking to Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor. We're going to talk about a story back here that you've alerted me to, Isabel, which is really very worrying. This is the story of an old gentleman. He's 77 years old, and his name is Ernie Bland. Now, 4 years ago, more than 4 years ago, he was charged with a charge called harassment without violence. So he's been officially charged by the police and the Crown Prosecution Service. The allegation is that he swore at a neighbour and gave him the middle finger. Now, we're not getting into whether or not he's guilty. Obviously, that's a question of sub judice. But why he's complaining, he said, why have I had to wait for more than 4 years? I've been looking into this. I have a feeling this might be a record, the longest ever delay for a court case. Now, under the Human Rights Act, if your case gets too delayed, you have a right to petition for it to be dropped. I would have thought that this guy has a case here. His neighbours apparently are of Asian descent and don't speak English. So there have been problems getting them interpreters. They've also called for protection, so when they do testify, if they testify, they'll have a screen around them, as if 77-year-old Ernie Bland is somehow or other dangerous. But he has been saying, you know, why is this every time? He towards December last year, he got a letter saying, we can now, Mr. Bland, thankfully tell you when your case will be heard in court. It's February. And he's thinking, February, my God, it's not going to be until February, another 3 months. No. February 26. 2026. So this poor old guy has been waiting 4 years for this case, and they're still kicking the can down the road. Now, most cases in this country get delayed a most disgusting amount of time, often 2 years, more than 1 year. That is bad enough. But if you get to 4 years, I think you have to drop the case, don't you?
Well, I mean, this case really shocked me, or rather the handling of it. I mean, you've described what he's accused of doing, and obviously we're not getting into the detail, but it is as trivial as it sounds. And the reason I make that point is the length of time that it's taking to bring this to any conclusion is out of all proportion to what is actually alleged here. It's not like this is an immensely complex fraud case, you know, some kind of thing with international dimensions and very complicated case law. It is a very, very minor charge. And somehow or other, it has tied numerous people, professional people, in knots for years and years and years. And this says everything you need to know about why our courts and our police are in the woeful mess that they're in. Because if they are spending all this time trying to process very minor cases, minor versus a case in which someone was seriously injured, or a murder, or, as I say, a big fraud trial or something, then what confidence can we have in their ability to crack on and actually deal with hardened criminals? None whatsoever. And there's a human dimension this too, as you so rightly say. You know, Ernie is in his late 70s. How can it be right to keep an elderly gentleman waiting with this hanging over him for year after year after year? Because when you're out on bail, that does reduce your ability to do things, to go places, to live a normal life. And I just feel desperately sorry for him, and as angry as apparently one of the magistrates involved in the case was herself, and throwing her head into her hands at the continual delays.
And apparently so one of the reasons this case keeps getting knocked back is because the magistrates, or the court, has decided it will take at least a day to hear the case, because Ernie's, by the way, he's from Oldham up there in Lancashire, all right? So because Ernie's neighbours don't speak English, and therefore the case will take a long time. They also want to be screened behind security screens, because 77-year-old Ernie apparently is some kind of risk. He's not happy about that. But it seems to me that he's being punished because his neighbours can't speak English. You know, I'm not making any comment about that. But if it means that this poor old boy keeps getting his case kicked down the road for 4 long years, I mean, that isn't justice. And apparently Ernie says that in a couple of his appearances, because he's defending himself, because he can't afford a lawyer, in a couple of his court appearances where the magistrate said, sorry, Ernie, we've got to delay this again, solicitors and lawyers sitting in the court have hunted him down outside, have found him and said, Ernie, you've got to get this case kicked out. You can't wait 4 years. I mean, as Ernie himself says, he feels that having to wait more than 4 years is against his rights under the Human Rights Act. And I think he's probably got a case. But it does throw into a sort of harsh light what's happening in this country. You know, I did it myself once. I had to wait more than 2 years for a court case to come to court. Every time it's about to come to court, delay. And I sympathise with Ernie, because, you know, waiting for a court case that could define the rest of your life is quite a nerve-wracking, distressing experience. And these delays are unjust and in fact scandalous. And the fact that we've got a justice system that shrugs its shoulders and said, oh, well, you know, February 26th, that'll be 4 years. Is that all right with you? No, it isn't all right with Ernie, and it's not all right with us. I think it's about time we started kicking our legal system up the backside and putting an absolute sort of time limit on these cases. If you don't do it within a year, then all cases will be dropped. It's not good enough.
Well, especially in cases of relatively minor allegations which require armies of translators to actually get on to make any progress with. I do feel that the police and the Crown Prosecution Service have an overwhelming duty to the taxpayer, and that is not to waste taxpayer resources on pursuing ad nauseum something that is alleged to be quite trivial. And round they go, providing endless services at taxpayers' expense. You know, you have to ask, when the alleged victims are unable to speak English, just what a circus it must have been, trying to note down exactly what they allege to have happened, and back and forth you go to Ernie, and here we are. And can anyone really defend the length of time this has taken? It's a complete joke. I really think it is scandalous.
I agree with you, and just to reiterate, folks, what we're talking about here, we're not making any comment on the alleged offence or anything like that, but what we're talking about here is a neighbourly dispute. It's a dispute between neighbours where something may or may not have happened, but nothing physical, nothing violent, few alleged hurty words and an alleged nasty gesture. That's it. To wait 4 years for that.
Oh, it's playground stuff. It really is playground stuff. And how we've got into a position where people go running to the police about this stuff, especially people who can't speak English and explain it without calling on taxpayer resources. I'm sorry, I find that reprehensible.
Well, if you live in a country where the Prime Minister is very, very keen on the rule of law, he should be looking at cases like this. And talking to the Prime Minister, we'll be talking about him next, so stick around.
They promised stability.
They said the grown-ups are back in charge.
I was so happy you just couldn't believe it.
Our work is urgent, and we begin it today.
I mean, you couldn't really scrape together a worse gang of misfits to run a dog kennel. Broken promises.
Billions blown.
Botched U-turns.
And Britain is burning.
One of the most immeasurably eventful.
1 year in power.
And Britain in freefall. It's just been a disaster.
1 year of chaos.
Friday, 4th of July.
9 p.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Still with Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor. Well, Isabel, they were just playing during the break a promo, a trailer for our big programme on Friday night, 9 p.m, which is 1 year of Labour hell, basically, Starmer's year in power. So we're looking back on that catastrophic 12 months. And I was trying to point out, because I was sitting there with Alex Phillips, so we revived our little double act, Kevin Alex. And I was trying to, so basically I sat there and agreed with her for about 20 minutes. What she said, what she said. I was trying to point out that, look, on this station, You know, there's a lot of people like me and you and Alex and Mike and Julia Hartley-Brewer. You know, I'm not pretending we're left-wing. We tend to be on the right-wing side of things. I think we're centrist, veering rightwards. I think that's kind of our outlook. So, when we got a Labour government, I'm not pretending we weren't always going to be looking for trouble. We were going to try and undermine them, try and make them look bad, pick on any of their mistakes. That's the way it is. You know, right-wing outlets attack left-wing governments and vice versa. That's the way it goes. But what we've seen over the last 12 months has superseded that by a mile. This has gone way beyond politics. I wouldn't even care if they were bringing in, you know, viciously left-wing policies, as long as they were doing it with just a modicum of competency, or even, dare I say, efficiency. What we're looking at is, after 12 years, never mind politics, this has been just a catastrophe, an incompetent catastrophe by a government that doesn't know what it is, run by a Prime Minister who doesn't know who he is. They have been rudderless, hopeless, U-turned on every significant policy, and their inefficiency is off the scale. As I say, this hasn't just been a bad year, it's been a shockingly catastrophic year. And today, the pollster guru, John Curtis, has said so, that this has been the worst first year by any British Prime Minister in history, and that's in terms of polling. It is quite extraordinary how bad they've been, isn't it?
I mean, it has just been one disaster after another from the earliest days of this administration, you know, plunged as it was into those summer riots, which was so catastrophically mishandled by Keir Starmer, the cover-up over Southport, the denigrating of millions of furious and deeply upset voters as far-right thugs, you know, on and on and on it's gone, the tanking of the economy. You know, we could sit here and list all that stuff, the winter fuel fiasco, on and on. And just Keir, but really, what does it boil down to? It boils down to Keir Starmer's personality and his inadequacies as a leader of our country. And I remember watching him on a couple of interviews, some of those big prime ministerial, they were auditions really, because at the time he was leader of the opposition in the run-up to the election a year or so ago. I remember watching him and thinking to myself, my God, this guy is going to be hated because he really looks and sounds weak. And if he sounded and looked weak in the run-up to an election when he was giving it his all, we had no idea what was to come. And you make the point about many of us on Talk being, you know, admittedly partisan. And I am, you know, my partner is deputy leader of Reform. But I also want the best for our country. And I've supported and said many good things about Labour administrations in the past. I mean, I found a lot to admire. I will admit it. I found a lot to admire about aspects of Tony Blair's administration in the heyday, the highlights of the Blair years. This has been an unmitigated disaster, and in 20 years of political reporting, witnessing all manner of incompetence and ineptitude, I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a lot of the stuff that Tony Blair brought in, I absolutely despised, and I still think Tony Blair destroyed a lot of the structure of this country, the cultural structure of this country, and he's got a lot of questions to answer. But that isn't the point. The point is, I always expected not to like what Tony Blair was going to do, but in fairness, he knew what he wanted to do, and he brought in what he wanted to do with competence and efficiency. He was dynamic. He said what he was going to do, and he did it. And you couldn't complain. I mean, all I was left doing, like yourself probably, just saying politically I don't agree with this guy. But with Keir Starmer, as I say, if only we could just say, well, I don't like his politics. I don't even know what his politics are, to be honest with you. But what I don't like about him, what I'm terrified about him, is that he's useless. And so are all his front bench shadow cabinet mates as well. They're all hopeless. The disaster, the kind of shambles of it is off the scale. Every policy he's come up with, he's U-turned on. Even last week he began to U-turn on his speeches. He suddenly said, oh, I wish I didn't say that island of strangers. I deeply regret that. So it's like anything he does that he hears someone didn't like, he goes, oh, sorry about that, I'm U-turning on that, I'm sorry. He's a straw man, he's a jellyfish. He's got no backbone and no idea what he stands for. That's what John Curtis said. His big problem is after a year, the electorate have no idea what he stands for.
Well, I don't think what he stands for appears to be, the future greatness of our country, does he? Does it? As he's busy selling off parts of our overseas territory. Well, worse than that, we actually have to pay for it. I mean, there have been so many betrayals by this Prime Minister, and on the key issues that voters really care about, right up there being immigration and the tidal wave of migrants crossing the Channel. His achievements after a year are zero. In fact, things have got worse. It's the worst ever year so far for Channel migrant crossings. So I don't think this is recoverable. The guy cannot, I don't think, get over this first year and the impression that he's created. But what is so terrifying is the amount of damage he's done in 12 months to our country. How is this going to look a year from now?
Apparently Angela Rayner, who's on manoeuvres, her people believe that they can install Angela Rayner into number 10 within a year. They don't think Starmer's got long to last. I tell you what was very significant, though, Isabel, was towards the end of last week, where he had to buckle to his 130 or so backbench rebels. Many of them left-wing, but many of them just constituency MPs worried about their jobs. They're thinking, if this guy carries on in power, if Keir Starmer is the Prime Minister when we come round to the next election, I lose my job. I will be voted out. So backbenchers are starting to fear that this guy will lose them their seats. And that's when a Prime Minister loses his authority. And the fact that he completely U-turned, well, he's U-turned now on, of course, the winter fuel allowance, the rape gang inquiry, and now the welfare bill, and also his island of strangers speech. So that's 4 complete U-turns since June the 9th. Now, the backbenchers are not impressed by that, and they now know that they've got the Prime Minister in their pocket. He will do anything they say. So they're running the country now, not the Prime Minister, which is even worse than before.
Well, undoubtedly, he will be replaced. And yes, now the smart money seems to have moved from Health Secretary Wes Streeting to the more charismatic, dynamic Big Ange. And, I think she is more of a political challenge for parties like Reform, which is beginning to really eat into traditional Labour votes. Angela Rayner isn't everybody's cup of tea, but at least she has charisma. At least she's engaging. At least she's fun to watch and listen to. I mean, she's hard left. And when it comes to her policies, I think we can have a pretty good debate about those. But she is, I think she offers Labour a bit more hope of not being absolutely trounced at the next election than the current clown in number 10.
Because I think people know what she stands for. I mean, you're right. I think she's dangerously left-wing. She's up there with Corbyn. She really is. But just like Corbyn, with Corbyn, you knew where you stood. You might not agree with him, but you knew where he stood. Same with Rayner. You know where she stands. I don't know what the hell Starmer stands for, except, please, can I be Prime Minister? That's it. It's a mess, Isabel. It's a mess. Brilliant hour, though, from you. Thank you so much, Isabel Oakeshott, our international editor. Back in a moment with Ben Habib. Stay tuned.
We've just been talking in the office here about how many of us have been attacked at some point or other by some form of flying beast or any wildlife. I mean, so we'll take your stories this morning.
Hello, this story is concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino?
Right? Yeah,
okay.
rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its 2 front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich, don't dirty minds, away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, cripes, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. In about half an hour, we're going to be taking your calls, 03444991000. Want to find out what you think about what happened at Glastonbury. Bob Villan, death to the IDF. It's suddenly, well, at long last, Avon and Somerset Police, the local police force there, have announced they've opened a criminal investigation into whether or not an offence was committed here. I wish it wasn't an offence, but if we have these hate speech laws, then it looks to me like an open and shut case. Why have the American State Department, within hours, almost minutes, revoked their visa, saying this was a call to violence, a racial incitement to violence, and in America we don't allow people into the country who do this, so therefore we are taking their visas away. So they were able to do that like almost immediately. Why has it taken now a day and a half for Avon and Somerset Police to say they're looking into whether or not a crime may have been committed? Death to the IDF. That is a call to kill Jews, isn't it? Now, as I say, you know, I believe in free speech. I'm a bit of an absolutist, so I'm not sure that I like the idea of even people who shout that being jailed. But if we have these laws, or being prosecuted, but if we have these laws, if we're going to put Lucy Connolly, a housewife, into jail for writing nasty words, hurty words on Twitter, a few hundred miles from the riots in Southport, if she's going to jail for 2 years and 7 months for inciting racial hatred and racial violence, then surely Bob Villan should face charges, shouldn't they? I mean, what is the difficulty here? We all saw it. We all heard it. What's going on? Let me know what you think. 03444991000. Why the delays? Also, the Director General of the BBC, Tim Davie, we're now finding out literally in the last hour or so, was there on the scene. And he made the decision to allow the live streaming of Bob Villan's concert to carry on. Now, the decision he should have made was take him off air. Oh, it causes technical difficulties, so what? So what? What he means by that, or what the BBC means, if they'd have taken the live stream off air, they'd have to go off air. So suddenly their 24/7 coverage of Glastonbury will be interrupted. That's what they mean by technical difficulties. Well, you know, one might argue that coming off air is the preferable option to allowing someone who allegedly spewed race hate and called for Jews to be killed to carry on being screened on the BBC. Wouldn't it be preferable to take him off air? 03444991000. What do you think about me? You know, I am now Kneecap's public enemy #1. I made their video. You know, media fascist. I'm on their hate list. Me, 03444991000. They got kind of overshadowed. Nobody cares about Kneecap anymore. It's all Bob Villain, isn't it? And let me know what you think about the Prime Minister's first year, 1 year of Labour. 03444991000. I would suggest it hasn't been that successful. Now, let's now move on, because you will recall last November, Ben Habib, friend of this show, friend of mine, comes on regularly, very good political commentator, very astute man. Now, he left. He was deputy leader of Reform UK then, and he quit the party. He had fears about the democracy of the party. He feels it's a bit of a dictatorship under the power of one man, Nigel Farage. So he's got his problems with. Anyway, he quit Reform UK. Anyway, he's now started his own party, and it's called Advance UK. Here's a little film.
Hello, folks. Now, some of you will know me as Ben Habib, the political commentator. Others as Ben Habib, the former deputy leader of Reform UK, as I was. Ben Habib, the Brexit Party MEP, as I was. But today, I address you in a new capacity. I address you as the leader-in-waiting of Advance UK, a new political force on the British political landscape, a new political party.
That was good, wasn't it? Well, let's talk to the man himself, Ben Habib. Hi, Ben.
Hi, Kevin. Thank you for showing that.
What a start. What a start. Very good video. Well, tell me, first of all, Advance UK, am I right in saying this will be a party that positions itself to the right of Reform UK?
So I reject the whole description of right and left. You know, I think it's a lazy, if you don't mind me saying so, Kevin, it's a lazy way to categorize people. The schism in British politics is not between those of us who are supposedly on the right and others who are supposedly on the left. The real split in politics is between those of us who believe in our nation state of the United Kingdom of Great Britain, who wish to have a proud, independent, prosperous country where policies are made for the betterment of the country and for its people, and that the supranational order, international law is ejected, quangos are removed, and we have true democracy representing the majority of the people in this country. That's my lot. And then the other lot are the liberal elite who believe in supranational institutions, love the EU, want to take our borders down, want to welcome foreigners into our country, as many as they like. They can all come, they can have a better lifestyle, better state support than British citizens. That's the schism. Those of us who want to protect and promote our country versus those who stand against our country, in effect. And I'm very much in the former camp. And sadly, Kevin, it is sad because Reform UK carried the flame, the torch of people like me to rescue our country from this liberal global order and to return us to a pro-British democratic constitutional and cultural settlement. And Nigel Farage is a fantastic campaigner and a brilliant speaker and so on, but he lacks a political philosophy. He is first and foremost a political expedient. He says what's needed in order to get into office. And of course I accept you need to get into office before you can do anything. But if you've sacrificed all your principles en route, there's no point being in office. Are you with me? You have to have an agenda that delivers for the British people, and then you've got to lead the British people into supporting you. And one of the reasons I fought for the democratization of reform was so that the membership of reform could then deliver that message to Farage. But he hasn't democratized the party. And after much, much effort, I decided there's no option, particularly after, the way they treated Rupert Lowe and threw him out of the party and brought, cases against him and so on. I decided there's no option but to launch a new political party, a force that can actually make the argument for the British state, for the British people, for democracy, freedom of speech, and equity under the law.
What principles and political ideas do you feel Nigel Farage has sacrificed in his pursuit of power?
So, for example, he is on the record saying he sees a united Ireland as inevitable. In other words, he does not stand for the democratic unit that is the union of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. He's perfectly happy to see Northern Ireland float off into the Republic of Ireland. He has said that he's concerned about the culture of this country, but he's not worried about the rate of demographic change. Well, the rate of demographic change, Kevin, is the other side of the same coin as the cultural damage. He talks about the need to protect our borders, but he will not declare in favor of the deportation of all illegal migrants in the country. Well, if you won't deport all illegal migrants in the country, effectively, you're just continuing the problems that we've got before. Anyone in this country illegally needs to know that they will be detained and then deported because they're criminally in our country. And Nigel Farage won't stand for it. Nigel Farage has also taken into Reform UK former Liberal Democrats, former Labour Party members, former wet Tory members. All these people created the problems we now face. And Nigel Farage doesn't have a political philosophy. He bends this way and he bends that way in order to curry favour with the people. And what we desperately need, Kevin, we desperately need a political force that has principles that will actually save our country, our constitution, our culture, and deliver for the people of this country. And Nigel Farage, I'm afraid, is so hot in the pursuit of power, so brilliant at his cunning campaigning, but he is not the man to save the United Kingdom.
And a lot of people thought that your former Reform UK colleague Rupert Lowe might hook up with you should you form a
in a
new
political
party.
sense, not in any other sense.
Well, yeah, I think he. No, I can't see you as a couple somehow. But seriously, he has made encouraging noises or positive noises about your move today. But he's got his own organisation called Restore Britain. A lot of people thought he might hook up with you politically. Why hasn't that happened, Ben?
So we had extensive discussions, and Rupert and I are completely politically philosophically aligned. But I believe that the only way you can really change the way politics is done, the way the country is governed, is through the ballot box. And to deliver through the ballot box, you have to have a political party. Rupert, I think, is much chastened by his experience at Reform and has decided that, in fact, he wants a movement. He wants to garner support from across parties, the Conservative Party, Reform, from any party, frankly, that believes in the various things he believes in, which are very similar to what I believe in, and use that as the pressure to bring change. But I don't think you can really bring effective change unless you do it at the ballot box. And that's just the difference between Rupert and me. But I joined his movement today. And I hope Rupert will join my party in due course.
Okay. Yeah, so then you'll have an MP in the House of Commons. But if you were to sum up what Advance UK stands for, I don't know if you've got any slogans worked out, but what would it be?
It stands for Proud, Independent, Prosperous United Kingdom in all its parts and for all its people. It is a party for the British people, by the British people. It is not about me. It is not about other members of the executive. It is about what the British people need, what the British state needs in order to restore itself to its constitutional, cultural and economic prosperity.
And what would you say to charges that you're splitting the right? I mean, obviously Reform UK get accused of that all the time because if they hooked up with the Tories, they could probably quite easily beat Labour, but they don't want to. What do you say to the fact that you are fragmenting the right even more with your party?
Well, I come back to where I started our discussion. You know, there's no real thing. There's no such thing really as the right. You know, for those of us who want to protect and promote and, nurture our country, and and the other lot who are part of the liberal global order. And I'm afraid Farage doesn't have the political philosophy that's required to do what's needed to create a proud, independent, prosperous United Kingdom. He doesn't have it. He's a political expedient. He wants power. And the Conservative Party is it's lost its conservative DNA. It doesn't know what it is. It's still fighting to rediscover what it is. By the way, Kevin, if either Reform or the Conservatives actually say and do what's required to be done to save this country, I'd be the first one. I would gladly vacate. I can't tell you how much I want to vacate politics. The only reason I'm in it, I swear, this is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I'm only in politics because I fear for the future of the country. The minute I get confidence that the future of the country is secure, I am out.
What would be, I think you might have a way to go there, Ben, but a nice ambition. What would be, suppose Advance UK tomorrow are in power, what is the first thing you would do?
I would repeal the Equalities Act and I would repeal the Human Rights Act. I think these two things have set aside what it means to be British, set aside what it means to be a meritocratic nation, a nation that is not blinded by discrimination and prejudice. The Equalities Act created prejudice and discrimination. The Human Rights Act set aside what it means to be British. I would remove those two things. First, instantly they would go. And actually, by the way, Kevin, if I was short of ideas of what to do, I would repeal every single law that was made since 1998. I would take us back to a legislative framework that preceded Tony Blair coming to office. Just about every single thing Tony Blair did was damaging to our country. And Cameron followed exactly the same tune. We need to go back to where we were before that lot. It's about repeal, repeal, repeal. But the first two things I'd repeal are the Equalities Act and the Human Rights Act.
And for the avoidance of doubt, what would you do about migrants, the migrant crisis? What would you do specifically about the small boats, shall we say?
Okay, well, I'll give you my whole policy. But my policy will need to be endorsed by the party in order for it to be party policy. But my view is this. You revoke the Human Rights Act, you remove the European Convention of Human Rights from the body of British law, you stop the boats in the sea, you tell them to go back to France, and no way do you allow them to come into this country. And if those people somehow do manage to come to this country, you detain them, you lock them up, and then you deport them. And en route to deporting them, you do not give them benefits, you do not allow them, clearly because they're detained, you don't allow them into the workforce. You also have to deal with mass migration. We've got to ensure that dependents who people who've got work visas or come here for education do not come. You've got to get rid of this notion that dependents are welcome into the country. If you're coming here for a specific purpose, fulfill that purpose and then go home. You've got to have a moratorium on indefinite leave to remain. You've got to have a moratorium on granting British citizenship until our basic mass migration issues are dealt with. There are some very simple, clear things that need to be done to deal with the mass migration that we've suffered in the last few years. And then just to reiterate myself, you have to get rid of the Equalities Act, which is the mechanism by which they've delivered DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is effectively the promotion of minority interest rights to the detriment of the majority. You have to remove DEI from the regulatory and legislative framework.
Absolutely. And just quickly, how many people do you expect to sign up? How many are you hoping will join Advance UK? Give us a little advert, but if people want to join, how do they do it?
Yeah, so go to advanceuk.org.uk, I'll repeat that, www.advanceuk.org.uk, and sign up as a member. When we get to 30, the test I've set the British people, if I can call it that, is sign up. If we get to 30,000 members, which is what Reform fought the last general election with, 30,000 members, then we will go to full political party status. I will donate £100,000 to the party, and we will go for a fully fledged national campaigning political party type mode. And we will, but that's the first test. Can we get to 30,000? And today, by the way, I think we've pushed well north of 3,000. I haven't looked at the last figure.
That's a good start. That's a good start. Now, before you go, Ben, I wish you all the best with your party, Advance UK. Keep us posted with progress. I want to get just quickly your comments or your thoughts on what happened at Glastonbury. First of all, Bob Vylan, the actor. They're not just one person. They're a kind of band called Bob Vylan. The lead singer, his name is Pascal Robinson Foster, I do believe, very, very working class name. But he called for death to the IDF. It has now taken the Avon and Somerset police a day and a half to come to the point where they're accepting that maybe, yes, there will be a criminal investigation. Why did it take them so long for a kick-off? And secondly, what do you think, Ben, should be done about the BBC Director General, Tim Davie, who was apparently, we only learned this in the last hour or so, was on site at Glastonbury. It was referred to him and said, this guy Bob Vylan has just shouted death to the IDF. What should we do, boss? He said, carry on live streaming. They're now saying, the BBC is now saying, with the benefit of hindsight, that was not the right decision. So he's made the wrong decision here. The BBC, the state broadcaster, now looking as if it kind of, turned a blind eye to this guy potentially breaking the law. Shouting death to the IDF is an incitement to racial hatred, allegedly. What should happen to him? What should happen to the Director General of the BBC?
So what he said, or what he sang, was much worse than anything Lucy Connolly did. He was effectively, he did a number of things. He was advocating violence against the IDF. And people have to remember the IDF is not a conventional army in the sense that we have a British army that is ready for combat and fight, is a paid up army. The IDF basically comprises the entire Israeli nation, because they all go through national service. He was effectively calling up for violence against the Israeli people. And in doing that, he also revealed that he supports the proscribed terrorist organization Hamas, because by inference, instantly what he's saying is Hamas should kill the IDF. That's what he's advocating. Hamas is a proscribed terrorist organization. But the BBC's reaction does not surprise me at all, because the BBC has refused repeatedly to call Hamas what it is, which is a bunch of terrorists. The BBC often, habitually, quotes UNRWA figures and Hamas figures coming out of Gaza, UNRWA being the UN Relief and Workers Agency, members of whom were part of the 7th of October massacres we discovered later. The BBC is hijacked by this. I touched on it when I was talking about Advance UK. The BBC is hijacked by this diversity, equity and inclusion agenda, which effectively promotes forces antithetical and antipathetic to the United Kingdom. And the BBC needs to be hauled up in front of, it can't go in front of any kind of body because it's self-policing. But it needs a good kick in the damn shin.
But the Director General can, because he is the editor.
He should be sacked.
He's the editor of the BBC, and therefore he is responsible for their editorial decisions. He apparently actually made this decision personally to carry on screening. As you say, I think this time Tim Davie, who's made a career of staggering from one crisis to the next, I think this one may be the straw that breaks the camel's back. It's time for him to go, isn't it?
It absolutely is. Every foot he puts forward, he puts it wrong. From Hugh Edwards to this, to UNRWA and a whole lot else. the BBC has become the mouthpiece for things anti-British. And that brings me, again, back to Advance UK. It's so desperately needed, a political force that will see the BBC becoming the British Broadcasting Corporation. Not the bloomin' Hamas Broadcasting Corporation, but the British Broadcasting Corporation.
That would be nice, wouldn't it, Ben? Ben, listen, best of luck with your party, and we'll talk to you about it regularly. And great to talk to you now. Thank you so much for your time. Ben Habib there with his new party, Advance UK. What do you think? 03444 499 1000. Actually, it will be a party that's right of Reform UK. Ben Habib alluding to the fact that many believe Reform UK has become a bit too mainstream, a bit central. Do we need a party to the right of Reform UK, Advance UK? Would you vote for it? Would you give it your support? 03444 499 1000. When we come back, we're going to talk to Layla Cunningham. She's the former Tory councillor for Lancaster Gate in the flagship Tory borough of Westminster, big borough here in central London. She last week, sensationally as they say, quit the Tories and joined Reform UK. Guess what she received in the last couple of days? A letter from the Tories saying they were suspending her membership pending investigation. Just useless. She was on every newspaper, on every television company, on radio channels, TV channels like us. And the Tories didn't seem to notice it. Layla said that she thinks this kind of bureaucratic shambles, this shambolic incompetence, is indicative of the Tories' death spiral, that they're in a death spiral. What do you think? 03444 499 1000. That's next. Stay tuned.
They promised stability.
They said the grown-ups are back in charge.
I was so happy you just couldn't believe it.
Our work is urgent, and we begin it today.
I mean, you couldn't really scrape together a worse gang of misfits to run a dog kennel. Broken promises.
Billions blown.
Botched U-turns.
And Britain is burning.
One of the most immeasurably eventful.
1 year in power.
And Britain in freefall. It's just been a disaster.
1 year of chaos.
Friday, 4th of July.
9 p.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Now, let's talk about Reform UK and the Tories. Last week, we covered the story. We got in touch with her and she was kind enough to come onto the show because she's been a Tory councillor for some years in Lancaster Gate, big area in the middle of London. For Westminster Council, one of the biggest councils in the country, the Tories' flagship council. Layla Cunningham decided to quit and join the Reform UK party. She was all over the place last week, talking to not only us but other outlets. She was in the papers. The Tories don't seem to have noticed this. They wrote to her, subsequent to her very public quitting, saying that they were suspending her membership and that she was under investigation and she better be a bit quiet during this period. So as well as being useless, Layla says the Tories are dysfunctional, and she sees this kind of level of bureaucratic incompetence, because that's what it is. It's pathetic, really, isn't it? As a sign of the Tories' death spiral. Let's talk to Layla Cunningham. Welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show, Layla.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Good to have you back on. But this is hilarious. You tweeted this, private and confidential. Dear Councillor Layla Cunningham, this email is to inform you that your membership of the Conservative Party has been suspended pending an investigation into your defection to Reform UK. Well, you'd already left.
I resigned by nature of defecting.
Yeah.
Somehow that passed them, and it just shows that they're always late to the party. They create a problem and they try and solve it, but they're way too late. And it's the same with Kemi saying, we got it all wrong the past 14 years, but we're going to fix it. It's just going to take us a few years to figure out how.
They go on to say in this letter to you, you are reminded that suspension from the membership means that you may not participate in any party events or meetings, including the party conference. I mean,
arrogant.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
I mean, the arrogance, I mean, they didn't realise that the horse has very much bolted. And it's funny, at the end they say, I'll be invited to partake in the investigation. Ooh.
Yeah.
But instead of asking why I left and why we lost in Westminster and why we lost at the General, they just go after, gagging people who dissent.
Well, so you quit. You've already quit. They should have known. This letter.
And I sent the appropriate letters to inform my chief whip, my group leader, that I quit.
Of course you did. Of course you did. This letter that the Tories sent you after the event goes on to say, you are asked not to make any public comment or announcement. How's that going? This includes posting anything on social media, including this. You're reminded this email is marked private and confidential, meaning it should not be shared or published. Well, screw you. If you can't keep up with events, Tory Party Central, you're going to reap what you sow. And I mean, they should have noted that you'd left. And perhaps acted accordingly. Instead, they embarrass themselves with this bureaucratic bungling. This is humiliating, isn't it?
Well, and they also forgot I'm a lawyer, so I know that when you write private and confidential, it's not legally binding at all. And what's funny, you missed in the letter, it says, keep this private and confidential for your protection. It's almost, it's taking people for a fool. It's for the party's protection, not for mine. But that's the problem with the Conservative Party. They've made bureaucracy a sort of religion that we all have to rely on, and you can't. You've seen it in their government, and you've seen it. It's crippling our country now.
So what's it been like, Layla, since you went public with your resigning from the Tory Party? You spoke to me. You've been on several other outlets. What's it been like?
It's been the best week ever. The support I've had from residents, especially, residents who are ardent Tories, saying, we completely get it. It's the right decision. From big business leaders in my ward, in Westminster, emailing me saying, thank God you did it. And I had a residents' meeting in one of my local estates yesterday, because that's one of the reasons why I quit, because the Conservatives delayed major works to their estate for 10 years. So I don't know if you know this. So they were meant to pay 30,000 10 years ago for their major works. This is a council estate. They're paying 100,000 now for major work service charge, and they're going to have to sell their flats. And I'm helping them with that. And I couldn't consciously do that. But one resident said, Layla, you've become the most interesting politician to me. And I said, why? And she said, well, you've risked your seat for your conviction. And she said, there isn't really anyone talking about that because politics has become so tribal. And that's the problem, Kevin. Both parties have stopped hustling for the vote.
Yeah.
There's an entitlement to it. And you see it in that letter. That's an entitled letter, an arrogant entitlement.
Do you get, Layla, on the doorstep when you talk to your constituents or your ward constituents, do you detect that, as I do, that there's a lot of anxiety around the country about the migrant crisis. We learned today that 200 more came across. We know we've got a Prime Minister and a Home Secretary who haven't got the faintest idea what to do about this. It's no good talking about smashing the gangs when you don't smash any gangs, and the migrants just keep on coming in their thousands. So we've got a government with no plan. We've got this continued invasion going on day in, day out, thousands a week sometimes. People are very worried about this, aren't they?
You say thousands, I say millions. I mean, in 2020, since 2022, we've had 2.5 million people. The size more in I think it was 9. I can't remember the number in 2023, but the size of West Yorkshire so far has come since 2022, and that puts a burden on the NHS, on housing, on our infrastructure, on everything. And it's a public purse. It's us that pay for it.
Yeah.
And it does change the fabric. So I tell you, I was campaigning in Hemel Hempstead last year under the Conservatives, and I knocked on a woman's door, and she said, you know, I was a Conservative voter for so long. And she told me, I think I'm going to vote for BNP if they turned up. And I said, why? And she said, my whole area has changed. My whole area is full of asylum seekers. They've created an ad hoc mosque down the road. There's traffic is at a standstill on a Friday when they come and pray. She says, I don't recognize my area anymore. And you're seeing this up and down the country, and it's not right, and it's not fair, and it creates division, and it creates anger, and it creates resentment.
I think I asked you this last week, and I think this is a very important element of exactly what you're saying there. Of course, it creates great anxiety, people seeing the nature of this country culturally changing in vast swathes of the land, particularly up in the north. Some of these towns and cities, they're just not recognisable anymore. Yeah. But I think the really worrying element of this is I'm loath to say the increasing number of sex crimes being committed, but there are signs that sex crimes are going to become central to this issue. Now, we had a couple of weeks ago the two migrant kids, Romanian kids, 14 years old, charged with the oral rape of a local girl in Ballymena. We saw what happened there. 5 days, 5 nights of solid rioting, very violent rioting, an angry community rising up in fury. We've got a case that emerged last week of an Afghani migrant who arrived here in 2023, was billeted. He came across on an illegal boat, a small boat, was billeted in Scotland, and literally within hours pretty much raped a 15-year-old local girl, explaining that no one had told him about the cultural differences between Afghanistan and Britain. So that's why he raped a woman, because over in Afghanistan, apparently they're a little more relaxed about raping women. They feel better about it. So he said that. We had a camel herder from Qatar last week. It was emerged he raped a fellow patient in a Chelsea hospital. He was flown over here for heart surgery. He raped a woman there and said, well, the thing is, where I'm from, I have so little contact with women, I've never really even spoken to one. You see what I mean? And we also know now that the chief executive of Portsmouth Council is under investigation for allegedly telling councillors and council employees not to tell anyone that the man charged with a local rape was a migrant, was an asylum seeker staying at the local asylum seeker hotel, which is called the Royal Beach Hotel in Southsea. He told her, don't tell anyone it's an asylum seeker. We know of similar cases going on in Manchester and London. This kind of cover-up of offences committed by asylum seekers, because the authorities are terrified that if we, the people, start finding out that rapes are happening, sexual assaults or any kind of crime committed by these people that we let in, if we start finding out, there's going to be hell to pay, and the authorities are worried about it. But their approach to this increasing crime wave committed by asylum seekers is just to try to keep it a secret. That's not going to work, is it?
But oppression of freedom of speech seems to be Starmer's modus operandi. I don't know. He sent a signal out to senior civil servants last week to not speak to the press without permission. And that included government bodies at arm's length, such as Ofcom and Ofsted. And, you know, I was under at my interview, and the government's trying to suppress it. They're trying to suppress the facts, and it's not right. And I know from being a prosecutor in London, a large majority of the criminals in my court were illegal asylum seekers. And you know, they get full legal aid as public defence.
They get full legal aid, and you know, the information that's being put out is, you know, a local man was charged with this rape. What they don't mention is that the local man's an asylum seeker who doesn't speak any English. That's what's going on, and the authorities are trying to cover this up. And I'll tell you what, Layla, that is a recipe for a volcanic disaster. It really is. When
That's already happening. The disaster's happening. You're seeing, you know, cultures are very different. For me, I think if you don't come here and you don't want to embrace British culture, then they don't come here to contribute to the country. They come here for the sole purpose of taking from them. If you come here and you want to work and you want to contribute, then we'll consider it. But when you come here for the sole purpose of taking from the country and then committing crime in our country and then talking badly about our country, what are you doing here and why are we paying for them? You said he's staying at the Royal Beach Hotel. Who's paying for that?
We are. Listen, Layla, it's really good to talk to you, and I hope that as the Tory party investigates you, it's not too traumatic for you. I mean, if they find out you've joined Reform UK, there could be hell to pay.
I know, it's going to be hard to uncover.
Yeah. Once those sleuths get on your case, you're going to be in big trouble.
Exactly.
Listen, it's really good to talk to you, Layla. I hope you come on regularly. It's a pleasure. Thank you very much. That's Layla Cunningham, the new Reform UK councillor there in Westminster for the Lancaster Gate ward. What do you think about what she's saying? 03444991000. That cover-up. We're beginning to pick up that there's a cover-up going on of crimes being committed by asylum seekers. Lots and lots of young men with nothing to do while they await to find out whether or not we're going to let them stay. So if this cover-up is going on, if they're really covering up the crimes being committed by these young men, when the public find out, as I say, there's going to be hell to pay. 03444991000. When we come back, we'll take a quick call or two, and then we're going to talk about Glastonbury again, so stick around.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. So we're going to go to another break again in just a second, but I want to know what you think about what happened in Glastonbury. Should Bob Villan face charges? Should the Director General of the BBC, Tim Davie, be sacked or step down after deciding to allow that anti-Semitic ban to carry on broadcasting? What do you think? Let's quickly find out what Adrian in Kent thinks. Hello, Adrian.
Hi, Kevin. How are you doing?
I'm all right. What do you think about Glastonbury and what happened there?
Well, I think it's, I don't know. I think the BBC is the sole broadcaster of.
You can say that again. They broadcast about 23 hours a day for 4 days straight.
Yeah. So they obviously pay for that, I guess.
Per se, yeah. I get. Yeah, they will do. Yeah, sure.
I won't get it for free. So I'm just wondering, because I think the BBC have, had some, I might have to say, influence on this.
Well,
on the way that the groups are.
Well, the point. I mean, I think they're part of the kind of pervading cultural political outlook there, pro-Palestine, anti-Israel. But I don't think you can blame them necessarily for what Bob Villan said. But what you can blame the BBC for is that they played it out and they kept playing him out. They kept him on. That's where they should be in trouble.
And I think that's just absolutely disgraceful.
Yeah, so you would agree, you think that the Director General Tim Davies should consider his future?
Absolutely, yeah, because it's not the first time, is it?
No, he just staggers from one mess to the next.
I think the sooner he's gone and the BBC is reformed, the better, because otherwise I think they're going to be out of a licence in about 3 years.
Yeah, well, the sooner the better. I don't see why we have to pay for a licence for this lot. I really don't. Adrian, I think we're on the same page. I agree with you. Thank you very much for an excellent call. Adrian in Kent, let's go straight back to some messages. When we come back, we're going to talk to Mike Neville about the legality, the police kind of angle on what's been going on at Glastonbury. That next, stay tuned.
They promised stability.
They said the grown-ups are back in charge.
I was so happy you just couldn't believe it.
Our work is urgent, and we begin it today.
I mean, you couldn't really scrape together a worse gang of misfits to run a dog kennel. Broken promises.
Billions blown.
Botched U-turns.
And Britain is burning.
One of the most immeasurably eventful.
1 year in power.
And Britain in freefall. It's just been a disaster.
1 year of chaos.
Friday, 4th of July.
9 p.m.
I wish I hadn't given that speech. I wish I hadn't said all those things. Whereas lots of people thought, oh my God, hold on, he finally gets it. He actually realises that how angry people are about immigration, and just because a few lefties complained about some of his tone, he sort of said, well, I deeply regret ever saying anything. So it's been
across the UK on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Somebody's congratulating me for making the grade at Glastonbury, because I was on Kneecap's hate list, media fascist and all that. Going, was it Kneecap? Pretty disgusting. Anyway, I was quite proud about that. But there you are. I've got lots and lots of messages hating on Ben Habib. They don't like what he's doing because he set up his own party, but he's got the right to do that, hasn't he? I think they're worried about splitting the Reform vote, but then again, the Tories are worried about splitting the right-wing vote, the Reform UK doing that. So anyway, we'll read some of the messages out later. Before we get to any of that, though, and we'll be taking your calls later. Let's go over to ex-Scotland Yard detective Mike Neville. Welcome, Mike.
Good evening, Kevin.
What did you make of what went on down at Glastonbury? Now, personally, I wish that there weren't laws against that which you say, things you can say. I think you should be able to shout rubbish if you want to at pop concerts, but we have these laws. And these are the laws that sent Lucy Connolly to jail for 2 years and 7 months. That was that she wrote hurty words on Facebook 200 miles from Southport, but was deemed to have incited racial hatred with her words. Now, if you're going to have that law, and she's going to go to jail for 2 years, 7 months, what should happen to this guy from Bob Villan, you know, who said death to the IDF, with millions of people watching on the telly and thousands of people watching live at Glastonbury, under the same banner as Lucy Connolly? This guy surely should face an investigation. It looks like finally the Avon and Somerset police are saying that they're going to criminally investigate this guy. Why did it take them about 28, 30 hours to decide whether or not to investigate this guy, whether or not an offence had potentially been committed? Because that was pretty obvious, wasn't it?
It was pretty obvious. And of course, though, we have Lord Hermer, who was saying that this idea of two-tier policing, the Attorney General thinks that's disgusting. But all this does is send out the message that this is exactly what we're talking about here, two-tier policing. Because, as you said, who said the worst thing? Lucy Connolly or this Bob Villan pop group, or, you know, this Pascal chap who said this rant? And not only has he seemingly committed offence under the Public Order Act of 1986 of using words and using threatening words and behaviour which stir up racial hatred, you've also got an offence of broadcasting this. So anybody who's responsible for broadcasting it, so that would be the Director General of the BBC and the producers and people on the ground who broadcast this, they're also possibly guilty of an offence under the Public Order Act.
Well, indeed. So, but why, in your view, did it take the cops so long to reach a decision about Bob Villan? Because the American authorities took one look at this, you know, death to the IDF, and they said this is calling for violence against a section of the community on racial grounds. In America, we don't put up with that. Nobody who voices these kind of sentiments is allowed into this country. Therefore, we're revoking Bob Villan's visa. So they made a decision literally within an hour, pretty much. Why did it take sort of 30 hours for the Bristol or the Avon and Somerset police to decide that possibly Bob Villan may have stated something that's illegal, that's an incitement of racial hatred? Because all right, we must say, you know, why did it take them 30 hours?
Well, because sadly, Kevin, you know as well as I do that if you spout sort of right-wing ideas, the law will be on top of you like a ton of bricks, like we saw with Lucy Connolly. If you spout ideas which fit in with a fashionable left-wing gadgetista sort of viewpoint, then the law can be very slow and not do much about it. And this idea of two-tier policing is really impacting on the trust and confidence in the police and the criminal justice system in this country. And every time they allow this to happen, it's a really bad thing. But the reason that it took 30 hours is because they sympathise with those views more than they do with the views of Lucy Connolly.
Yeah, if Bob Villan had stood up there and chanted, got the crowd chanting, "Death, death to the Muslim Church," then I have this suspicion that Avon and Somerset police might have moved a bit quicker.
Yeah, I think the sad thing is, and I was proud to be a Scotland Yard detective, and I've always been proud of British policing. The sad thing is, Kevin, I think you're right, and it just sends out all the wrong messages. And the whole scenario is ridiculous, isn't it? We shouldn't be having this conversation. We shouldn't have Lucy Connolly in prison, and we shouldn't have this latter-day sort of Ali G character shouting out all these silly words. We shouldn't be debating this, but we've been put in a position where the left-wing authorities want to punish people for what they say, but they only seemingly want to punish them if the words don't fit with their agenda.
Indeed. Now, put the case, Mike. You're a detective on this case. You're unfortunate enough to work for the very slow-moving Avon and Somerset Police. They've given you this case, the Glastonbury case. So you've got Bob Villan. You've got this recording of him shouting, "Death, death to the IDF." He also shouted some stuff about from the river to the sea, which is arguably illegal as well, because it's effectively calling for the annihilation of Israel and the Jewish people. So that's controversial as well. So I'm sure you'd say, well, yeah, we need this. This is potentially racial incitement to violence, and therefore we need to investigate this guy properly, which is what they've lately come to decide. What about, though, the broadcaster? Because we now know, this has only come out in the last couple of hours, that Tim Davie, the Director General of the BBC, was on the scene. And they put it to him, but this guy, Bob Villan, or this band have just shouted "Death, death to the IDF. What do we do about it, boss?" He said, "Carry on live streaming." Now, they've subsequently said that that was a mistake, that the boss made a mistake here. The corporation is saying, with the benefit of hindsight, we should have stopped the stream. Now, he made that decision. He is the editorial personification of the BBC. Every newspaper, every radio station, every TV channel has an editor who, if necessary, takes the legal blame for mistakes that his or her company makes. Now, he's made a mistake. The BBC have made a mistake. If you were a detective on this case, would you be saying we need to talk to Tim Davie and we need to talk to the BBC as well?
Absolutely, because as I've said, under Section 22 of the Public Order Act 1986, it's an offence to broadcast this sort of racial hatred. And so that offence, he would have to be questioned under caution. The person who's the producer and director would be the same, and anybody else responsible for that would be interviewed. And I would suggest that then papers would be submitted to the Crown Prosecution Service to see if these people should be charged. But it's not a case of that as well. It's a case of who should fall on the sword and who should be sacked. Now, if the senior man was there, as you said, an editor of the newspaper takes it on the chin, he was in charge. Not only was he in charge, you can't say, I'm in charge of the BBC, but I was away on holiday, this was a dreadful thing. He was there at the moment when people sought his advice, and his advice was very, very badly wrong, and some absolutely wicked and dreadful things. As you said, you have from the river, from the sea, they kill the IDF, and you also have rants about a former Jewish manager or something. So we know where this is going. He made that decision, and he must stand or fall by that now. He could try and offload it onto one of the producers or directors, but he was actually on the ground, and therefore he's liable to prosecution, and he could seriously consider his own position.
I mean, as I was saying earlier, that actually, technically, legally, even if he wasn't there, even if he was on the other side of the earth, he is the person who is the legal personification of the BBC. So if the BBC do anything editorially illegal, the Director General is the man in the frame. So he would be in the frame anyway, even if he wasn't there. But it just so happens he was there, and they asked him, said, "Boss, what do we do on this?" And he said, live stream, let the live stream continue. So he's responsible on two levels. First, legally he is anyway, and actually personally he was there. So I'd say he was in a bit of trouble, Mr. Davie, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. You know, but the whole thing is that it's just an absolute disgrace. I just feel sorry, Kevin, for all the Jewish people, my Jewish friends, but the wider Jewish community, that they have to put up with this. It's an absolute scandal. And I mean, the great ironies of these things, you know, you've got people chanting at a music festival for supporting the people who kill people at a music festival. And then you've got the ridiculous situation where somebody who's named their band Bob Villan, obviously taking it from Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan was a New York Jew. It's just the whole irony is collapsing, and it's just what a wicked nation we've become when people chant these vile things on TV, and it's allowed to go out on TV.
I agree. I was saying earlier that I think the organisers have got a lot of questions to answer as well. I mean, they're saying, oh, we're shocked about what Bob Villan said. Well, you shouldn't have turned Glastonbury into a massive Palestine flag waving then. Also, Iranian flags all over the shop. The organisers, that's their fault. Michael Evers saying, oh, if you don't like our politics, go elsewhere. No. Mike, great to talk to you. Let's talk again soon. Your call's next. Stick around.
We've just been talking in the office here about how many of us have been attacked at some point or other by some form of flying beast or any wildlife. I mean, so we'll take your stories this morning.
Hello, this story is concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino?
Right? Yeah,
okay.
rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field." Put your foot down, this rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting his front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its 2 front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich. Don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, cripes, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I know what you're thinking. Where's Kinsey Schofield? Usually I would join Kinsey around about right now, in fact, but we've delayed her, postponed her for 24 hours. She's got something on, big story, so we're going to hook up with her tomorrow, same kind, 9 o'clock. In the meantime, it gives you the chance to step in. You can be the stars of the show for the next hour. So for the next hour, we're just going to be taking your calls. We're going to be talking about all the issues that we've been talking about. Should we kick off with a WhatsApp voice note on Bob Villan? And this is from Jonathan.
Good evening, Kev. In 2013, a soldier was assassinated on the streets of the UK because he was wearing a uniform, a British Army uniform. Jews have been stabbed in New York, and this Muppet calls for the death of the IDF without realizing the consequences being that some nutter might attack innocent people going about their business. So, and what kind of world are we living in when people are calling for the death of innocent people just doing their jobs?
Well, exactly right, Jonathan. Yes, the lead singer of Bob Villan thought he was being sort of counterculture, but he's just a cretin, obviously. His schoolboy rhymes, rubbish songs. But he thinks he's sort of changing the world, I suppose. Good luck. Anyway, his real name is Pascal Robinson Foster. His brother's called Porsche, and his sister's called Paris. And he's from the mean streets of Ipswich in Suffolk. Man, it's a bit like being from sort of Brooklyn or Brickleston or something like that, isn't it? No, it's not at all. But anyway, he thinks it's good stuff, and he's really making a name for himself. Not in America, he's not, because they've taken his visa away. So he's self-harmed in that respect. Well, listen, let's talk about what's gone on there. Let's first of all go to Cambridgeshire and talk to Chris. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Kev. Kev, look, let's really look at this. Take Lucy Connolly. She was in an incredibly stressful situation when she wrote that tweet. Mm-hmm. It was her heart talking rather than a brain, if you like. Yeah. Full of stress, full of heartache from losing a child, etc., etc., etc. Some moron of a judge sat and said, "Oh, we must make an example." I'm sorry, but she should never, ever have even been arrested. Yet we have this idiot who sits down and deliberately thinks, how can I make money? How can I make a splash? How can I make news? How can I cause lots of aggro? And comes up with a load of junk like that.
I don't think. Here's what I think, Chris. Here's what I think. I don't think either of them should go to jail. I don't think. Obviously, I think it's an absolute scandal that Lucy Connolly was even considered for jail. Absolutely. She wrote a few hurty words.
She is
hundreds of miles away.
Why is this one still walking the street?
Well, I don't know why the police have been so slow. It took them about 30 hours to work out that just
What's
maybe.
Good for the goose should be good for the gander.
Yeah, if you're going to put Lucy in jail, you have to certainly consider putting Bob Villan in jail as well.
Absolutely, and the BBC, man.
The BBC have got a lot of questions to answer as well. We're talking about two-tier justice again, aren't we? Totally. Of course. And while I tweeted this at the weekend, that Bob Villan, in a way, exhibited this rather strange legal anomaly in this country, that incitement to racial hatred is quite rightly against the law. It's a very serious offence.
And you can't get any more incitement than he went through.
But wait a second, Chris. It turns out that in this country, the strange anomaly is if you incite violence against Jews, that's okay. That's not against the law. That seems to be what tied Avon and Somerset police up in knots for 30 hours. You know, we saw what he said. He said, death to the IDF. Why did it take them, a day and a half to consider that just maybe that was an incitement to racial violence and hatred?
Absolutely. It is a total incitement. And did you see the number of Palestinian flags in that audience?
Palestinian. If you look around, there are quite a few Iranian flags as well. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
Sorry,
and that's what I think about the
started to stamp down on that.
Well, I think the organisers, technically speaking, Bob Villan may well have broken the law here. That may well be seen as an incitement of racial hatred, death to the IDF. That's sort of basically saying kill some Jews. So that is racial hatred, arguably. Then you've got the Director General of the BBC, who personally decided that live streaming of Bob Villan should be broadcast. So he's got some legal questions to answer. The police probably should talk to him as well. Not probably, they definitely should. And also, but I think very importantly, and they've escaped the flak so far, and they shouldn't, and that is the organisers. Michael Eavis, the bloke who owns Worthy Farm, and his family, his daughter, who gave this big statement, saying, was shocked by what Bob Villan said. It goes against our values. Well, look at the cauldron of anti-Israel, pro-Palestine fanaticism you created there down at Worthy Farm, Gloucester, down at Glastonbury. You created this huge mass of flag waving, Palestine flags, Iran flags, anything that hates Britain we love. It was a counterculture sort of revolutionary event. All a bit pathetic because they're all middle class. They all work at the bank. They just take 4 days off and pretend to be hippies, counterculture revolutionaries and all that. It's all a bit sad and middle class, but there you have it. But the organisers, Chris, just saying, we're shocked and we really don't approve of all of that. They created that forum for anti-Israel hate, and they've got questions to answer. I think maybe they should be talked to as well by the police.
I'm fed up to the teeth with people like Starmer putting this on a plate for us all. It's just getting to the stage in this country where you don't know what's law, what isn't law, who it will apply to, who it won't apply to, and what excuse you can do to get away with it.
Yeah, exactly right. When you saw last week, we have MPs, like Labour MPs, like Zahra Sultana, and particularly Richard Bergen, that Corbynista idiot backbencher guy, who came on to talk and refused to condemn the people who are alleged to have broken into Bryce Norton and allegedly caused that damage.
Right. Yeah.
£30 million worth of damage to vital British military stock at a time where war may be impending, maybe soon. You know, we have MPs who won't condemn people like that. When we have MPs who won't condemn traitors who allegedly destroy British military equipment at a time almost of war, it's not surprising we're going to get pop geeks like Bob Villan standing up and saying death to the IDF. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I do. That is horrible. It's just getting stupid what people are doing in this country.
Well, it's encouraged by the culture. You're quite right, Chris.
You know,
it's encouraged by the culture that is engendered by our anti-British Prime Minister.
Absolutely. We are losing all sense of value, and it's just crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And I do fear for the future of the UK.
Yeah. What worries me mainly, well, there's lots of things worrying about me about what went on at Glastonbury. But what is really worrying me the most is the lethargy, the slowness with which the police got onto this case. They were dragged kicking and screaming onto this case. Yeah. Now, if Bob Villan, as I've said this a couple of times today, if he'd have stood on the stage and shouted death, death to the Muslim church, he'd have been in jail within about 2 minutes, wouldn't he?
Off the stage.
Yeah. You know, death, death to black people.
That's it.
You know, but if you say death, death to Jewish people, the police aren't that bothered about that. They can't get too worked up about that.
It is absolutely...
It's anti-Semitic is what it is. We are living in an increasingly anti-Semitic country.
The thing we've
got to do something about it.
We need to start the worst part of it is starting in the schools.
Yep. I agree.
You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. Just generally speaking, I mean, we've got left-wing teachers brainwashing little kids at the formative stage of their life. What chance do they stand when they got teachers saying, "This climate change, the planet's going to be dead in about 2 minutes. We're all going to die." You know, these kids are young enough to swallow this claptrap, hook, line, and sinker. They swallow the left-wing line on everything. They're being brainwashed by idiot teachers who are left-wing. The future looks bleak, Chris, for that very reason. But good to talk to you as always. Good call. Thank you very much, Chris in Cambridgeshire there. Let's move on. Let's talk to Jack in Gravesend. Hello, Jack.
Mr. Kevin O'Sullivan.
How are you, mate?
This weekend, honestly, this state broadcaster, the absolute shambolic.
Did you see that I made it, though, Jack? Did you see I made it to Glastonbury?
Yeah, congratulations. You're 4 or 5 or 6 words on there. Absolutely
was it kneecap? Pretty disgusting. Do you know what I was actually saying at the time? It sounds like I'm going, kneecap are pretty disgusting. No, I wasn't. I remember what I was saying. I was explaining that I thought it was pretty disgusting that in Northern Ireland, these 3 idiots had chosen to call themselves kneecap. Because, of course, kneecapping was an IRA punishment to dissenters, where people had their kneecaps shot off. So that's what I was saying. I mean, I'm actually, you know, I believe kneecap have got a right to exist. I believe Bob Villan's got a right to exist. But if we're going to have these laws... whereby we call them hate speech or incitements to racial violence. If we're going to have these laws, I've got my doubts about them, but if we're going to have them, if we're going to put Lucy Connolly in jail for 2 years and 7 months for writing hurty words on Facebook during the Southport riots, then surely Bob Villan, maybe kneecap, and maybe also the Director General of the BBC, Tim Davie, should be trying to find out whether or not they like prison food.
Continuity is it's ridiculous. But yeah, congratulations you and Cardi P making it there. But yeah, it's just absolutely ridiculous. How many chances are they going to get to keep screwing up with everything? There's no impartiality on anything. It's all one-sided.
Yeah, well, it's anti-Israel. I mean, the BBC's line is anti-Israel. BBC newsroom stands accused, frankly, of becoming a cesspit of anti-Semitism. Certainly some of their reporting of the Gaza conflict seems to be rather pro-Palestine and pretty vehemently anti-Israel, to the point where some people say this is just straight Jew hate. And what we saw at Glastonbury, on a general basis, not just Bob Villan and Kneecap, on a general basis, all these Palestine flags, it was a kind of massive kind of cauldron of anti-Israel sentiment, this kind of left-wing pro-Palestine coming together of all these people, as if that's legitimate, that's the right thing to do. That's your establishment there, Jack. That is the new establishment, all those people with Palestine flags. They're Guardian readers, they watch the BBC. The Guardian and the BBC encourage all of this.
Yeah, well, Julia mentioned something earlier about someone she knows quite high up in the BBC, and it's riddled with it, but they don't know it. They can't see it.
They can't see it in themselves. It's such a good point. That's it. They think they're angels, that they're whiter than white, that there's nothing wrong with them, and they are sort of paragons of impartiality, totally unbiased. Well, there's nothing more biased than a very biased person who thinks they're not biased. And that's the BBC for you. They think they're utterly not biased, and yet you watch their reporting of Gaza, they are massively anti-Israel. They don't like Israel, and they love Palestine. That's the BBC's line. But you're right, Jack, they can't see it in themselves.
It's riddled. I don't know how many chances and opportunities they have before it gets to, and like you say, with the recent news that's come out the last couple of hours, that the Director General gave. Obviously, it's not been completely confirmed.
I think it's the Telegraph that's reporting it, and it does seem that Davey was definitely there. He usually is. I mean, most of his staff are there. They send about 500 people down there to cover it. As we say, we're hearing that he specifically, personally made the decision to carry on live streaming Bob Villan after they said death to the IDF. Now that, no ifs, no buts, that was the wrong decision. The BBC is saying it was the wrong decision. So surely he's got to face up to the responsibility of what he did. He made the wrong call. How much longer are they going to let this guy, this Director General, make wrong calls? Because he makes a wrong call almost every day, usually more than once. He just staggers from one self-created crisis to the next. Hugh Edwards, you name it, he's done it. Now he's got this. He messes everything up. Gary Lineker. Just absolute shambles, time after time after time. Now he's done it again. This surely must be the day the BBC realise it's time for Tim Davie to walk the plank, right?
Absolutely. It's like a drunk stumbling through a pub crawl.
Yeah, drunk. Yeah, that's exactly. Good analogy, Jack. Good to talk to you, mate. Call me again, Jack in Gravesend. Let's go to break. More of your calls when we come back. More of your messages. Keep them coming.
Position he finds himself in. It's the anniversary later on this week of his first year in power, and he seems to have just sort of just torched everything.
Wes, we are talking about the Glastonbury and controversy over Villain at the moment, or Bob Villain. Your party colleague Lisa Nandy, who is the Culture Secretary, has spoken to the BBC about this. What she said and what does she want them to do?
So Lisa Nandy, the Culture Secretary, is talking to the BBC Director General about how it was that these comments came to be broadcast. And I do think there are questions for the BBC and Glastonbury to answer.
Also, all eyes now on Avon and Somerset Police and the approach
across the UK on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Steve Chandler sent me a text. He said, hi, Kev, I don't know if you noticed, but Bob Villain actually showed you on the screen behind him during his show. Well, not quite right there, Steve. I was the prelim. I was the build-up. I was one of the people used to build up the tension and the excitement ahead of Kneecap coming on. So I think the chronology was Bob Villain, then this is me this is my bit, then Kneecap. Kneecap are the headliner, Bob Villain are the backup band. Yes, it was Kneecap that chose to turn me into a Glastonbury star, one of the proudest moments. There I am, you can see me there. I'm going to this Kneecap, pretty disgusting. Anyway, yes, I rather enjoyed that moment, but thanks, Steve. Yes, I did notice. I got a lot of flack. I got a lot of actually, I got a lot of praise on Twitter and Facebook and all of that. A lot of people, and Instagram. This is one from Marilyn in Dewsbury. This is a good one. She said, I've just submitted a crime report to Avon and Somerset Police naming Bob Villain and the BBC as committing hate crimes against the Jewish community. Everyone who is offended should make the same effort. Love the show. Marilyn, I'm glad you've done that. I mean, I don't think they should be swept under the carpet. If we're going to have these laws, if we're going to put people like Lucy Connolly in jail for 2 years and 7 months, which we never should have done, out of the 385 people that went to jail very, very quickly after the Southport and Summer riots last year, 12 went to jail for nasty words on Facebook, on social media, on X, on Instagram. Nobody in this country should go to jail for that. Nobody. But if we're going to send people to jail for that, like Lucy Connolly, then Bob Villain screaming death to the IDF in front of many thousands of Glasgow fans and millions of TV viewers, getting the whole crowd joining in. By the way, these middle-class kids, well, I say kids, 20s, 30s, they're most of middle-aged, middle-class, middle-aged people all going, death to the IDF. You know, I mean, what's going on there? I bet you most of them didn't even know what IDF stood for. But it's all wrong, innit, folks? Let me know. 03444991000. Steph said enough is enough with the BBC. Excuses. How much more utter crap do we have to put up with? I'm done. And I'm no longer going to pay the licence fee. A lot of people thought that about yesterday. It was the time they said enough. No more licence fee. Do you think the BBC deserved the licence fee after what happened at Glastonbury yesterday? Old Rod Stewart made the day, though, didn't he? First of all, he said, I like Nigel Farage, we should all vote Reform UK. Kneecap didn't like that. They didn't like that at all. Nor did that girl from, what are they called? What's the girl group called? Girls Aloud. She was, some girl Aloud was down there going, Reform, F you, Reform UK. Oh, shut up, you're in Girls Aloud. Right, let's go back to the phones and let's talk to Grace in London. Hi, Grace, what would you like to say?
Hi, I presume it was actually Jade who made those comments.
Yes.
And that was, she was in Little Mix, although...
Little Mix, was it? I know. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry to Girls Aloud. I'm really sorry to Girls Aloud. It was Little Mix.
Yeah, I do think that some of Jade's comments have been a bit unnecessary. And I think, for me, this controversy kind of speaks to me broadly, kind of epitomises one of the things that's really changing in our society, which is that you know, we talk about...
You mean that anti-Semitism is becoming legal?
Well, partly, but I think there's a wider issue. We talk about how this was a Christian country, and actually being a Christian isn't just about your heritage, or, I mean, a lot of people say that they're Christian just because it feels like the right thing to say when you come from Britain, and that's not really what being a Christian is. Being a Christian is choosing to commit to Jesus, who died for our sins. But his values have impacted how we see society. I mean, you were talking earlier about rape, and actually prior to Jesus' teachings coming here, some of the ancient peoples in Britain thought that rape was fine, but Jesus' teachings have influenced our culture. And for a while we've had this idea, although most people haven't necessarily adhered to it, but we've had this idea that, as Jesus said, you should aim to love your enemies. And I know it sounds mad, but that was one of Jesus' teachings. And yet now what we have is people like Bob Vylan just fomenting more hatred and thinking that it's actually virtuous, that it's actually morally good to make society more acrimonious.
Yeah, well, also to pick on one racial or religious racial group. That's what worries me, Grace, is that Bob Vylan is an example of an increasing syndrome, and that is that more and more people believe that you mustn't be racist, you mustn't be prejudiced against anyone unless it's Jewish people, then it's all right. Bob Vylan thinks it's okay to be anti-Semitic, and so presumably did all the crowd who joined in with him chanting death, death to the IDF. Anti-Semitism appears to have become the acceptable form of racism.
Well, they'll say that they're not racist. They'll say that they were.
Well, I don't care what they say. It is racist.
They'll say that it was just about the IDF and not about all Jewish people. But in all the conversations I've been having online with people since this particular conflict began, best part of 2 years ago now, gosh, I'm just getting the impression that, frankly, it is more about feeling good by hating others than it is about concern for the people of Gaza. I am concerned for the people of Gaza personally. I'm also concerned for people elsewhere in our world who are really suffering, like those in Sudan, in some other parts of Africa who are really suffering. And yet it seems that a bunch of people, rather than actually saying how can we make the world a better place, how can we help those people who are suffering from war and conflict, they just feel good about themselves by hating. It's not just Jewish people. I think it's also...
Well, no, I disagree with you. I disagree with you, Grace. What we've got here is an anti-Semitism problem. The oldest prejudice in the world is the prejudice against Jewish people, and it has reared its ugly head bizarrely and counterintuitively, re-reared its ugly head since October the 7th. Why on earth we witnessed the worst crime against Jewish people since the Holocaust and then rose up against Jewish people is beyond me. I disagree with you. I think we've got a specific problem, and it is anti-Semitism. It is the growing hatred of Jews because they're Jews. That is a problem.
I think we do have that, but what I'm saying is I think that people also feel good about moaning about this because they hate our politicians so much, and
there's that as well. But that's not what we're talking about with Glastonbury, though, are we? We're talking about anti-Semitism.
Well, I'm saying that when people discuss the conflict in Israel-Gaza, they often reference how much they hate our politicians.
Well, yeah, they do that, but they also reference how much they hate Israel.
Yeah, I'm not denying that there's also an anti-Semitism issue, and it's just frustrating.
There's a massive anti-Semitism issue. It's a big problem.
Yeah,
this is what's going on. What happened with Bob Vylan?
To make the world a better place.
Well, what happened with Bob Vylan is because people are more and more accepting anti-Semitism as respectable. That's the problem.
Yeah.
I wish something could be done about it. Grace, really good to talk to you. Always interesting. Thank you very much for your call. Grace in London. I mean, she's trying to sort of make it more general. Yes, there's a lot of hate in the air. People hate the government. They hate politicians. I'm with you there. But you cannot just say, oh, well, you know, this that's just symptomatic of the wide-scale hatred swirling around among us. No. I disagree with that. We've got an anti-Semitic problem going on. Bob Vylan, as Grace quite rightly said, he thinks he's virtuous, or that band think they're virtuous because they go around spewing anti-Semitic hate. You know, that doesn't make you virtuous, Bob. It really doesn't. It really doesn't. Or can I call you Pascal? What's his name? Pascal Robinson Foster, and his brother Porsche and his sister Paris. Do me a favour, the 3 Ps. Oh, God. Let's go back to the phones. Let's talk to Frank in Bristol. Hello, Frank. You want to talk about two-tier justice?
Hello, Kevin. Let me tell you what the problem with Starmer is.
No, we've only got 20 minutes to go, so...
This only take me a minute. He suffers from ulcers.
From ulcers?
It's a medical thing. Ulcers, yeah. Ulcer, it wasn't me, sir. Ulcer, it was him over there, sir. I didn't do it.
Yeah.
Nobody put it across my desk. The man's a coward.
Yeah. Somebody sent me a message, a text earlier, Frank, saying, "How long will it be before Keir Starmer says I'm sorry about this? I left my homework on the bus." That's basically the kind of excuses he comes up with.
Sir, what? Not to blame. That's right.
Yeah.
You know, you only got to go back through his history. He's left a Corbyn. He is a cowardly troublemaker. There's got no self-esteem. You can see that in him, no character, no personality. He is not a politician, not at all. He's a bully. Why? Because he got himself into a job as head of the Crime Prosecution Service where he could bully people. And that is why people are getting suspended sentences for rape and getting sent away like Lucy Connolly.
Well, yeah, but he's not here to talk for himself. We don't know why or how he got ensconced as Director of Public Prosecutions. And I'm sure he'd say that among his reasons wasn't that he wanted to bully people. But,
well, of course he's not going to say it, but that's what he's doing. You look at his first approach when he got elected in. Somebody asked him a question from the opposition, and they said, "Are you going to answer?" He said, "No." And sat down, just dismissed them.
It doesn't necessarily make him a bully, though, does it?
Quickly.
It doesn't necessarily.
Quickly,
yeah, go on.
Quickly, you tell me what you make of this. Do you remember the Bath pub landlord that refused to let me in the pub?
Yeah, in Bath, yes.
In Bath, yeah. I know that guy as it happens. I grew up in Bath.
Right.
But he stood in front of that man and he said, "I won't be spoken to like that by the likes of you." The likes of you? What does he mean, the likes of you? That man is an electorate.
Yeah.
He's one. He's a member of the public that elected.
He doesn't like being criticised. He gets very prickly. He's very sensitive about being criticised.
He can't hold it. He's got an agenda to destroy this country. No two ways about it.
Well, I don't know whether it's a conscious agenda, but certainly his agenda is destroying the country. I agree with you.
Yeah, there you go then. So it's not by accident now, is it?
Well, yes, it is by accident.
It's intentional.
Oh, well, you think no, I don't. I couldn't agree with you less. He's not talented enough to come up with a plan. What we're witnessing, Frank, is the chaos born of incompetence of this government. They're incompetent, and this is chaotic. They do not have a plan. They're not talented enough to either have a plan or stick to it. What's happening here is sheer chaos. Our Prime Minister and his government are just incompetent. There's no plan.
If he wants to look at history, it won't go on forever.
Well, that's for sure. But don't pay him the credit of saying he's a clever man with a plan. He's not. He's a useless idiot without a plan, and that's why we're in such a shambles. We're in such a state now. It's because of him. But he doesn't have a plan. He's ruining the country. I agree with you. But it's not his plan to do it. It's just happening because he's hopeless. Generally though, Frank. We certainly agree about Keir Starmer. Thanks for a good call. Frank in Bristol there. What do you think about what he said? What Frank just said. Do you think that Starmer is this sort of evil left-wing genius who's deliberately plotting to ruin this country? Or do you, like me, just think he's this useless idiot who has no idea what to do and no idea how to do it? Therefore, we are all caught in his shambles, a swirling mass of chaos. Not a plan, a disaster. What do you think? 0344 499 1000. Let's go to calls. Let's go to a break. When we come back, more of your calls, so stick around.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Here's a message, a text from Robert from Warrington. Rob, in fact, from Warrington. He says that I, and I think he's right, was the only real star at Glastonbury. You know, because I was on before Kneecap, going, Kneecap, pretty disgusting. Yeah, anyway, I made the stage, I made the grade, so yes, I think you're right, Rob, I was the only star at Glastonbury. He goes on to say, how do people sleep if they... how do people stand if they cancel their BBC TV licence? Brackets, complete waste of money. I really want to now, and I believe thousands of others may feel the same way. Why should we have this pro-Palestine guff shoved down our throats? It's disgraceful and disgusting behaviour from the national broadcaster. Good point, Rob. Thank you. Very nice message. And you're right, I was the only star at Glastonbury. Let's go back to some WhatsApp voice notes. This is Tristan on the BBC.
Thing is with the BBC, until there's some condemnation and they actually are going to receive proper consequences, hard-line consequences, these things are just going to keep happening, and it's just going to be the same as it always is. One rule for one rule for another, and it's just exactly the same with Glastonbury, the actual cesspit that it is, to be honest with you.
That's absolutely right. And this is from Simon. Simon in Bray. That's a nice town on the banks of the Thames, I do believe. I think isn't that where Heston Blumenthal's Fat Duck restaurant is? I think it might be. Anyway, it's a lovely place either way. And Simon writes, what really upsets me and is more worrying is not the idiot singer and what he said, but the thousands of people in the audience that chanted the same statement. I really don't understand the world I live in. I think it's just ignorance, Simon. I just think they're ignorance. They think they're doing something fashionable and, you know, kind of counterculture and revolutionary. They're pretending to be revolutionaries and rebels for 4 days. They all work in the building society or the bank, and then they put on their hippie clothes. Yeah, right on, man, for Glastonbury. And then they go back to their commuter jobs. But I think Simon's got a good point. You know, that idiot singer, Bob Villan, you'd expect him to say something like that, death to the IDF. But why did thousands of people loudly join in with that? Why? They all technically committed a crime there, I would have thought. Not right. Let's go back to the phones. Let's talk to Adam in Essex. Hello, Adam. You want to talk about our dear leader, Keir Starmer? What would you like to say?
The amazing Keir. Yeah. Thanks for having us on, Kev. I love the show and all that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
A bit nervous, right? Yeah, I was just saying to the lady before, I mean, my mum's not involved in politics in any way, shape or form. If ever I talk to her about politics, she's like, I don't want to hear about it, I don't want to hear nothing about it, yeah?
Yeah.
And like, the only time I've ever heard that she's actually voted was for the Monster Raven Looney Party from the back of the day when my dad wouldn't let her vote, yeah? Okay, so you just never did any of that.
They're now, they've changed their name, by the way. They're now called they're called the Liberal Democrat Party.
Oh, well, they really are. Okay, yeah, I'll have to let her know. She maybe know, I don't know. But,
anyway, so what were you saying about your mum?
Yeah, so she's never voted at all. Well, she has voted, but I've never spoke to her about politics. I've never heard anything out of her mouth about politics at all.
Right.
But kind of when he took away the winter fuel allowance, she was absolutely fuming.
Is she a pensioner, Adam? She's a pensioner,
yeah, she's...
so she lost her money, yeah?
Yeah, she lost her money, and you know, like, it's not the end of the world or anything, like the money was taken away, but she is entitled to it. It's her money, do you know what I mean? She's paid in the whole of her life and all that kind of stuff. It was the fact that she was so incensed by it. And so you managed to get someone who's completely mild-mannered on all the subjects of all that kind of thing, and she doesn't want to engage in it at all. But he even managed to get her to be that angry about it. And it was just like, well, there you go, mate. You've just done an absolute fantastic job there. I mean, like, again, I've no idea what she's going to vote for now, but it's just like...
It's really interesting, Adam, what you're saying, that your mum drawn into politics at this late stage in her life. I know a lot of people like this who've been kind of politically energised by the catastrophe of this past year. People who've never really paid much attention to Westminster or politics or the Prime Minister, been forced into it, just going, what the hell is going on? What is this party doing? So I think your mother is an example of something that's going on a big scale, that millions of people, I think, are suddenly waking up to the fact that this isn't just a bad government. We're used to bad governments. This is catastrophic, Adam. They are so bad. They are so incompetent, inefficient, idealistic, ideologues. It is terrible. It's terrible. They're left-wing and they're useless. Not a good combo.
No, big time. It's a bit like what the caller was saying before. You were saying kind of what does he stand for? Kind of Keir Starmer's like a flag. Just like whatever it's blowing, whatever's at the top of the Twitter list, whatever is there to be like talked about on that day at that moment. That's what he stands for. He stands for nothing.
He's a straw man. He's a straw man. He's a classic one of these people who say, if you don't like my opinions, I have others. Look what he's done ever since June the 9th. That's what, 3 weeks ago or something. He's or even less. He's done 4 U-turns. 4. That is the winter fuel allowance, the rape gang inquiry, which is now on, of course the welfare bill, which I think it will get heard tomorrow. He's done a U-turn on that. And let's not forget the big U-turn he did on his Island of Strangers speech. Said he the only decent speech he's made, he deeply regrets it. The guy is U-turning so much he must be dizzy. He doesn't stand for anything. If somebody says, oh, I don't like your policy, he just changes it. This is no good, Adam, and I think you made a very good point. And give my best to your mother, will you? And good to talk to you, mate. Please call me again. That was a good call. Adam in Essex there. Let's go to break. When we come back, more calls, more messages. Stick around.
Going to adopt, because I tweeted out over the weekend, having seen Lucy Connolly in prison just last Tuesday, if the police are going to be consistent to try and avoid the charge of two-tier justice and two-tier policing, then they need to arrest, charge, and frankly, judges should imprison Mr. Bob Villan.
The vile monster, Wayne Couzens, was secretly whisked to an NHS hospital for backup.
Well, this is an absolutely incredible story by our chief reporter, Mike Hamilton, who's done just an incredible job with this. I mean, it's the fact he's been given VIP treatment. He's been whisked out of HMP Franklin in Durham, one of the highest security prisons in the country that holds some of the most notorious offenders the British.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
By the way, migrant crisis update yesterday, 585 came across, 585, and we're hearing today so far at least 300. So 585 yesterday, 300 today, and rising and counting. So that's back in play. We'll have to deal with that tomorrow. The migrant crisis, while Glastonbury is going on, has been getting worse and worse and worse. So still that, always that. 03444991000. This is from, who's this from? There is Gordon in Burnham-on-Sea. With regards to Glastonbury, the festival is on a rest next year, so no festival. That will give them plenty of time to sort themselves out. Also, I see the new ferry company, the new Calais ferry company called Dinghies, are doing well. Can I just say, I'm ex-military of 25 years of keeping our country safe. So sad to see it broken. Exactly. John in Rugby says Michael Eavis, he's the old, I think he's about 80 now. He's been knighted for services to the Glastonbury Festival. He's the guy who owns Worthy Farm. He should be stripped of his knighthood, and other organisers should be investigated for allowing Glastonbury to deteriorate by becoming a toxic, hate-filled, anti-Semitic event. I've got a lot of sympathy for that. Let's go back to the WhatsApp voice notes. This is Andrew on Bob Villan.
Kevin, why do we give people airtime for villainous acts? Why are we even talking about these people? Because all you're doing is making them more infamous. The Director General of the BBC should be struck off, and the BBC should embrace advertising, and it would make the whole of the UK television system a whole lot better. Extremely annoyed.
Yeah, I agree with you, Andrew. The Director General, Tim Davies, got some questions to answer big time. He decided to live stream Bob Villan after he shouted death to the IDF. That is an extremely dubious decision, to say the least, to the extent the BBC has said it was wrong. It was technically editorially wrong, I think, but it was also arguably legally wrong. He could have broken the law there. 03444991000. Here's Darren on Glastonbury.
Avon and Somerset Police, what they'll do, they'll scratch their heads for a couple of weeks and then come back and say, oh, there's no case to answer, because it's not as if anybody was going to leave the festival, get down to Bristol Airport, jump on an EasyJet to Tel Aviv and go and kill any IDF soldiers. That's what they'll say. But they'll say, well, Lucy Connolly's different because she was in Northampton and people were rioting in Britain and trying to burn down migrant hotels. So people might have done what she told them to do. Guarantee Avon and Somerset Police will say, oh, no case to answer. Guaranteed, mate.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree, Andrew, but if the police drop this case, then we've got a massive two-tier policing, two-tier justice problem. We really have. Now, let's go back to the phones. Let's talk to, she's a new caller, love a new caller, Fiona in Berkshire. Hello, Fiona, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hi, Kevin. I was watching you talk to Isabel about delays in the court system earlier, and certainly as a family we've experienced this. My nephew was severely injured in an incident in London in October, the end of October 2023. He and 6 others were run into by a guy in a car. They were just sitting at a bus stop at 2:30 in the morning. So anyway, it's taken absolutely forever for anything to happen. The CPS sat on the file for ages and ages and ages and finally handed it over at the end of last year. And the guy appeared in court recently, so it's taken that long from then to actually appear in court. And then they've been told that the court case itself won't happen until the end of March 2026.
Well, as I said earlier, Fiona, justice delayed is justice denied, and this is becoming more and more of a problem.
That's the thing, it's hanging over them.
I've got, and usually the delays are down to, or heavily down to, the Crown Prosecution Service, who take inefficiency to whole new levels. They're unbelievable. They are so bad, it is unbelievable. They're understaffed. and under-talented as well. So we've got a problem there. But, you know, I've had an experience of it myself.
Yeah.
I had to wait more than 2 years for a case that I was involved in. And it's a disgrace. And now we learn this poor old guy's got a 4-year wait.
Exactly. And the thing is that the chap who is accused, obviously I can't talk about the case, but, you know, he's out on bail living his life, whereas my nephew and the other people who are injured in this are still waiting for some way of seeing who he was, you know, what the situation is. It's still hanging over them while they're trying to recover from life-changing injuries. I mean, they really were very severely injured. You know, my nephew spent 3.5 weeks in a coma.
Oh, dear.
You know, he will never run again. He was so severely injured. You know, he's a young man with a future ahead of him, and he's had to pick himself up and.
Well, it's just terrible. But I know from personally the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, they let everybody down. They let the people of this country down. They've got their problems. They've got their staffing problems. They've got bureaucratic problems. They don't have enough people working there. They don't have enough people of talent working there. But that does not excuse the fact that people like your relatives, your nephew, and people like the poor old boy that we talked about earlier have to wait for 2, 3 and 4 years. That is a disgrace. And frankly, the case for this old guy, the case should be dropped because it's against his human rights. Listen, Fiona, well, look, keep us in touch with your case and keep in touch anyway. It was good to talk to you. Very nice call. Fiona in Berkshire there. By the way, I'm just going to quickly read out the statement from Emily Evis. That's Michael Evis's daughter. She organises Glastonbury, and they issued a joint statement condemning Bob Vylan's work. This is the festival. This is what they said. As a festival, we stand against all forms of war and terrorism. We will always believe in and actively campaign for hope, unity, peace and love. With almost 4,000 performances at Glastonbury 2025, there will inevitably be artists and speakers appearing on our stages whose views we do not share, and a performer's presence here should never be seen as a tacit endorsement of their opinions and beliefs. However, we are appalled by the statements made from the West Holt stage by Bob Vylan yesterday. Their chants very much crossed the line, and we are urgently reminding everyone involved in the production of the festival that there is no place at Glastonbury for anti-Semitism, hate speech or incitement to violence. Well, that's Emily Evis's statement. That's what Glastonbury said. Well, Emily and the Evis gang, all of you organising Glastonbury, next time, don't let it turn into a huge cauldron of pro-Palestine, pro-Iranian fanaticism. You know, you've got Michael Evis saying if you don't agree with our policies, go to another festival. Well, that's not good enough. I mean, what that sounds like is we want to be pro-Palestine, anti-Israel, and if you don't like it, go somewhere else. That's what that sounds like. It's not good enough. So these organisers, they've got to do something about this. I don't want to see, no one does. I don't want to see all these Palestine flags next time we go. Hey, how about that? Ban them. Ban Palestine flags. Try that. 0344 499 1000. Let's go to Wayne in Lincolnshire, who doesn't want to pay his TV licence. I think you speak for a lot of people there. Was what you saw yesterday with Bob Vylan, was that the straw that broke the camel's back, Wayne?
What, that? No. Let's go back to the 80s when they took the BBC.
So a long time ago, then?
My life. They locked me up for 9 weeks in 1983. And
the BBC locked you up? For not paying your licence?
They did. Well, I've actually been locked up twice for it, but...
hang on, you've been done twice for it?
I'm not out of it.
So you went to jail?
Yes, I went in as a YP, as it would be young prisoner, but... she's calmer today.
But you went into jail when you were young for not paying your TV licence?
1983, the new Ford Sierra just been put onto the road. It pulled up outside my house, and I was very nosy.
How long did you get, Wayne?
Altogether?
Yeah.
2 months.
2 months. So you've actually been to jail for not paying your drive. Okay, so you've got every reason. Have you been paying it lately? Have you just stopped again, or what?
Yes, I did. I did pay it again, I started a family, etc. Then I moved to my new address, and it said to the occupier. Well, my name's been the occupier now for 15 years. But what I would like to say is, I always look at BBC, and so it's like as myself as David and Goliath. Well, today I feel like David because I was listening to Radio 4 just for educational reasons.
Yeah.
And I heard people who talk like this, chap, they're saying that they're not going to pay the TV licence.
I think there's a lot of people. I certainly would not encourage people to break the law because
no, we're not.
But a lot of people are sympathising with what you're saying. More and more people just aren't paying their licence. So the BBC got a problem there.
It's a big problem.
Yeah,
big problem. And I think I've got my day when it's sad, but there you go.
They won't put you in jail again, Wayne. I know that. But listen.
Listen. If they're going to put that young lady away for that tweet, I mean, not that I want to give them a chance. I think Alkia,
Lucy Connolly,
yeah, I mean, he's putting people in prison.
Well, if you're going to put Lucy Connolly in jail, then I'm afraid you can't allow people to stand on the stage at Glastonbury shouting death, death to the IDF.
Thank you.
That is anti-Semitic. That's against the law. Wayne, really good call. I'm glad you're on the straight and narrow now. Don't you ever not pay your TV licence again, except for now, like everybody else. Wayne, good call. Good to talk to you, mate. Patrick Hoskin will be in just a second to tell you what she's got lined up for your delectation from 10 p.m. until 1 a.m. So that's very, very soon. By the way, as I say, you probably will have noticed we haven't got Kinsey tonight, but we'll have Kinsey Schofield tomorrow night at 9 on the latest developments on Planet Meghan. You've seen that she's getting into more and more trouble about her jam and her products. Where do they come from? Oh, it's all homemade, in my backyard, my garden, my lovely jam and my honeys and bees and things. Yeah, but where do you get it all from? It doesn't look good. So people are saying, well, where are you getting this jam from? It's mass-produced. And then you're charging $14 a jar with packaging, £10. That's a lot of money for a jar of jam that you're saying sort of organic. Where are you really getting it from? Last week, we discovered that her $12 herbal tea bags come from some company in Illinois from whom you can buy the same tea bags for a third of the price. So she's hiking things up into the universe, price-wise, hiking them astronomically. On the basis it's Meghan and it's organic and it's so natural. Well, it's not. They're coming. She's getting them made by bloody great factories. Blimey. Well, we'll talk about that with Kinsey tomorrow. I was going to give out the phone number, but there won't be time to talk to you about it. But there is time to quickly talk to Gordon in Southampton, who wants Keir Starmer to go. I agree with you, Gordon. Why do you think he's got to go?
Well, he's got no empathy. He certainly doesn't care about this country. And basically, he's just given everything away. And the country is in debt like you wouldn't believe. And as he goes, having Rayner or any of the rest ain't going to cut the mustard. They'll probably be worse. They all got to go. Sorry. But
the thing is, Gordon, how do we get rid of them?
I don't know.
We don't get rid of them for another 4 years.
Well, by the end of 4 years, this country's going to be one hell of a state.
Yeah, well, I couldn't agree with you more, but I'm afraid the people of this country made their decision, made their political bed, their electoral bed. Now they've got to lie on it.
Yeah, but they're going to wish they didn't vote for him because...
I think there's a lot of buyer's regret around the country. I agree with that. But we get so many calls from people who say, I voted for him and it was the biggest mistake of my life. What can we do to get rid of him? Nothing. Nothing. You're stuck with him now. You made your mistake. Now you got to live with it. Gordon, I agree with you, but I'm afraid it's 4 more years of Keir. Gordon from Southampton there. Petrie's in the studio. How you doing?
It won't be 4 more years of Keir.
Maybe.
It'll be 4 more years of Labour, but it won't be 4 more years of Keir. I guarantee it. Anyway,
how are they going to get rid of him?
Oh, voting.
They don't have the mechanics.
Yeah, they
do.
They can do it. We got rid of how many in the Tories?
No, but the Tories have got a very different setup. The Labour haven't got a setup to get rid of their leaders. They haven't. We're stuck with Starmer. Trust me.
Nah.